All right, I'm showing 11:30. This is the meeting of the Dartmouth Board of Public Works for November 21st, 2024. This meeting is by Zoom. It's being recorded. We have two of our three members. I'll take a roll call. Mr. LaBelle?
Here.
Mr. Almy, myself is here. We have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order. Our first order of business is to approve and accept warrants. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve and accept the warrants for the bills payable period ending October 28 and November 4, 12, and 18 of 2024.
I'll second. Mr. LaBelle makes a motion to approve. The chair seconds. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The item is approved. Next item is to approve and accept payrolls.
Motion to approve and accept the payrolls for the weeks ending October 26th and November 2nd, 9th, 16th of 2024.
Mr. LaBelle moves approval of the payrolls. I've got new glasses. I'm just getting used to them. I'm sorry. The chair seconds. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Item is approved. Next item is to approve and accept meeting minutes. We were all present at the September 19th meeting. Mr. LaBelle, have you had a chance to look to the minutes?
I did, and I really have no comments, Mr. Chairman.
All right, the chair has no comments. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve and accept the meeting minutes from September 19th.
We have a motion to approve minutes by Mr. LaBelle. The chair seconds the motion. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next item is to consider meeting minutes of October 24th.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't.
Yes,
at that
that's
meeting.
correct. So we will have to table consideration of the minutes for October 24th until Commissioner Alves is with us. Next item is an update of the Abrams efficiency and efficiency study preliminary presentation. Mr. Barber, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, so Matt Abrams of the Abrahams Group, along with Weston and Sampson, have been working on rate and efficiency study, and they have, they worked previously on the water and sewer rate study with recommendations to capital and rate structures. And as of recent, they've been working on the solid waste and recycling enterprise, and as well as the DPW and efficiency study. Ben Rollins and Stephanie Collins of Weston and Sampson are here, as well as Matt Abrahams of the Abrahams Group to present. The board had recently requested having them to present a preliminary findings of their study. So they are here to present today.
All right. Welcome. Who's going to lead the presentation?
I'll jump
Rollins?
in here. Thanks for having us this morning, everyone. So I just requested to share my screen if I can. Oh, there we go. Okay. Can everybody see my screen here?
I can. There it is. Thank you.
I got it.
Perfect. Okay, guys, thank you. Thanks again for having us here today. We appreciate it. So I'd like to mention this is phase 2 of a 2-phase project here. The first was to set new rates for water and sewer. We are on to phase 2 at this point, which is an evaluation of the other DPW subdivisions. We have administration, engineering, highway, snow and ice, solid waste, recycling, transfer station, and fleet management. Similar to the first phase, we have been evaluating the costs, revenue requirements, and revenue streams for these other subdivisions. And we also held interviews with town employees to gauge how the town is operating and evaluate the efficiency of the DPW. So a quick outline here, we're going to jump in a quick update of the water and sewer rates, see how the estimated revenues have come about and compare those to previous fiscal years. And then we'll also state our objectives for this phase, and Matt's going to run us through some rate options and a summary of those efficiency interviews. So looking at the water rate increases first. So the water rate was increased 7.5% in fiscal year 2025. And as shown on the graph to the right here, in this next year, we are looking at some revenue increases through October 31st. So we're up 830,000 over fiscal year 24. And we're also up 620,000 over the average of the previous 3 years, which is great news. And estimated year end, we're up at up $907,000 over fiscal year 24 and 1.6 million over the average of the last 3 years, which is great news. As for sewer, the rate was increased by 8.5% from the previous year. And a similar story here, revenues through October 31st look good. And by estimated year end, they're also looking up as well. 29% over last year, 39.4% over the average of the 3 years through October 31st. And similar story, 21.7% over last year for estimated year end, as well as 38.9% over the average of the previous 3 years. So some quick objectives here. So similar to the water and sewer rate study, we're looking at a 10-year window to hopefully maintain capital costs and budget for the town, and as well as looking at a retained earnings of a solid 15%. So that's what we did for water and sewer. It's a solid goal to maintain, and we're shooting to do the same here for the sanitation division specifically as well. So we're looking at operational costs, indirect costs, debt service costs, as well as capital costs. And we're hoping another focus on our end was to keep Dartmouth's trash rates lower compared to similar communities. We thought that was important. Got some feedback from the folks in town as well that was important. So we're examining the current staffing practices and procedures to identify areas that could be improved and where efficiency can hopefully go up a little bit. I'm going to knock it over to Matt.
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Ben. Good morning. Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group. So we're going to focus on the sanitation division or the solid waste enterprise fund with these next few slides. We've done a background analysis of it from a financial standpoint. So we can talk a little bit about where that is, and we're also going to present to you some potential options for changes to fees or rates for solid waste. As Ben mentioned, we're looking over 10 years and we're targeting a retained earnings percentage of 15%, which is the same target that we use for the water and sewer analysis. So we have some options for your consideration to try and get there. First, the background slide. Recent rate action, there's been no changes. There have been no changes to the annual trash pickup fees or the cost of trash bags in the recent past. We're talking years. Transfer station charges for bulky item waste program that was last updated in March 2023, and DPW maintains a nice clean schedule related to that with all of the fees that are charged as part of that program. But again, it was last updated in March 2023. The other fees that we're focused on, the trash pickup fees and the trash bags, those have not changed in a while. The town pays an assessment to dump solid waste in a New Bedford landfill annually. The cost is about $150,000 annually, or about 8% of the annual budget. If New Bedford doesn't open up another cell in the near future, trash disposal costs could skyrocket. In other words, the option that the town currently has to dump solid waste would go away, and that would become more expensive.
We're talking about Crapo Hill, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would be the district rather than the city. Yeah, New Bedford.
With a new cell, Dartmouth gains an additional 5 to 7 years at similar expenses today, but there's uncertainty whether that new cell will open, and again, that could lead to additional costs. Debt service, we definitely focused a lot on debt service with water and sewer. The solid waste enterprise fund does not have any currently, which is good. And from a capital plan standpoint, 286,000 was authorized and approved for the current fiscal year of FY25. The town does maintain a capital plan for capital items related to solid waste with multiple items planned in the future, all of which is planned to be funded out of retained earnings only. So the point there being that there are no plans to borrow for capital funds, which is something that we saw on the water sewer side. But again, solid waste does not have any borrowings and does not plan to have any borrowings. The estimated impact of the current capital plan, if you combine up all of the items in the plan, we're looking at just under $2 million over those 5 years. And again, no plan to borrow. Next slide, please. Quick look at other financial items. Actual results. We put together these same two graphs for water and sewer, and we were looking at that. Just to note that 25 is the current fiscal year, so that's a projection for both of these graphs. But the way that this graph works on the left, we're looking at actual results. So financial results comparing revenues to expenses in each of the years that we're looking at, FY21 through FY25. These are all positive numbers. The graph would show bars going downward from that $0 line at the bottom if there were deficits in any of these years, but there were not. So we're looking at surpluses in each of these years of just under $1 million FY21 down to the projected surplus of about $155,000 in FY25. So in other words, all positive results in the solid waste enterprise fund over the past few years, which has led to increased retained earnings, as you can kind of see in the graph on the right. The blue line is what was actually certified for retained earnings. The red line is what's targeted, which is the 15% of expenses. And you can see that the retained earnings certification numbers have trended well above the target for a few years now, but are now starting to trend downward a little bit as we're looking at a projection for FY25. Now, I just want to note that that projection for FY25 is based on no rate changes. So if there were rate changes, I'm sorry, we're in FY25, so there wouldn't be any rate changes. Okay, that'd be for next year. So that probably is pretty accurate. So it is trending downward at this time, but there are things that can be done to try and reverse that trend. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so this is our baseline or do nothing scenario. So this is looking out multiple years into the future. We are taking a look at the current fiscal year where we think that's going to end up. We're taking a look at other future years just to get a sense of what happens if we don't change any revenues, if there are no changes to the rates and the fees that we're looking at. And also, I just want to mention that this assumes that there's no capital plan authorization. So all of that capital plan, that $2 million I was talking about, was presumed not to be authorized. So we have those two factors: no additional capital, no additional revenue, but just all of your other revenues and your expenses. This is what it looks like. So it's the same retained earnings projection graph that you can see there. The blue is well above the orange, but trends downward eventually, getting below the orange and depleting completely by about FY28, FY29. So there are a few years here where the fund can operate with no additional revenues. But if there seems to be a need to increase revenues in the short term to allow the fund to operate at its current levels and also to fund capital. So now we're going to start talking about different options for your consideration. We did take a look at those 3 different areas or 3 different fees, I guess I'll call them, or groups of fees. The 3 that we're looking at is the trash fee, which is the annual pickup fee. That's the first one. The bag fees is the second one. And the third one is the transfer station charges, which those charges there are multiple charges there, as I mentioned earlier. So any changes to it, we're just looking at a percentage change across the board for all of those different charges. So this particular option is focused on just changing the trash fee, the annual pickup fee. That means that the other charges, the transfer station charges and the sale of bags would not change under this scenario, just trash pickup fee. And I also want to mention that each of these options do assume full capital funding. So we have factored that in to allow that to happen. And then said, okay, well, what do we think we need from a revenue standpoint in order to fund everything and also keep retained earnings around the area that we want them, which is that 15% target. So we have the trash fee increasing, which is the bottom table in this on this slide, every 2 years. Under this scenario, the trash fee would go up $30 in FY26, $40 in 28, $40 in 30, and $20 for the next 2 years of changes to complete the 10-year look. Now, again, this is based on current estimates. If this were to be looked at 4 years from now, these numbers might look different, but this is currently what we're looking at. So again, the bag fees would not change under this scenario, but you can see the trash fee impact to users in that top table. There's the trash fees row. So currently they pay $90, and under this scenario, that would increase to $120 per year with the first change, then to $160 per year with the second change, and then $200 per year with the third change. And you can see that with the changes that are identified over the 10-year period, that retained earnings graph keeps the blue above the orange, eventually trending back downward towards the end of the 10-year look, but consistently above the target in this scenario. Next slide, please. All right, so option 2 is taking a look at all the fees. What would it look like if we're changing all the fees in each of the years that we thought made sense? So let's focus on the bottom table. We have the transfer station charges going up 20% across the board in FY26 under this scenario. So that's the next fiscal year. Trash fees, $20 annually, and the bag fees, the small going up $2, and the large going up $4. And you can see the same changes 5 years later, and then the same changes 4 years later to complete the 10-year look. And the top table shows how this would impact annual charges for any user of solid waste. You see the trash fees going up $20 initially in FY26. The small bag, this would be the cost. Okay, so let me explain this a little bit more. The trash bags small line in that top table assumes that a user would use 1 trash bag per week, 1 small trash bag per week. That's the cost of that user to do that. $52 a year currently would go up to $72.80 annually if they use 1 small trash bag per week. And likewise, the row below that is showing a user that uses 1 large trash bag per week, what that user's annual costs are, which is $104 today. That would move up to $145.60 annually under this scenario. So most likely a user pays that trash fee amount on the trash fees line and would pay, one of the next 2 lines, either small or large, or maybe a combination of those. Okay, next slide, please. So in this particular slide, we focused again on changing all charges, but staggering them, with the focus initially being on the trash bags first, and the trash pickup fee and the transfer station charges second. You can see in the bottom table, we have the small bags going up $2.50, excuse me, in the next fiscal year of FY26, $5 for the large. The next year, trash fees going up $10 annually. And then the transfer station charges 10% after the year after that. And the same changes just a few years down the road, staggering them as we go. And the top table, you can see that trash fees would go up $10 in FY27, and the small would go up about $26 annually for a user that uses small bags only, and about that's $52 annually for a user that uses large trash bags only. And And with the way that we have this broken out, there would be additional changes to those costs to those individuals, but that's the FY 26 and 27 impact on them. And then the last slide for the options is very similar to the prior one, but instead of focusing on the trash bag fees first, we're focusing on the trash pickup fees first. So we have that as an FY 26 change of $20, and then we have the trash bags changing $2 in FY 27 for small, $4 for large, and then the various impacts to the individual shown in that top table, but I don't think I need to go through those again. So each of these options consider, you know, different variety of things that could be focused on, but we feel like any of these, or, you know, a very similar variation to the ones that we're showing, would allow the solid waste fee to fully fund its capital plan over the 10-year period, as well as keeping retained earnings at or above the target, as you can see with each of the graphs that we've shown on these 4 slides. I know that's a lot, and there's a lot here, but we have a summary slide for you for each of these options that follows. Then you go to the next slide.
Mr. Abraham, if I may, I think this is a good point to ask Mr. LaBelle if he has any questions.
Well,
Sure.
the one question I do have is, these retained earnings from year to year, what happens to that?
So
Are they maintained, or have we spent that down annually?
I'll take a quick shot and then allow Mr. Barber to comment on this, but it's basically like money sitting in a bank. It's there for your use. These have been earnings that have compiled over time. It's up to the department how they want to spend it. They do spend it on capital regularly, and I think that's probably its primary purpose. If the fund is showing a deficit in a given year, then retained earnings could be used to close that gap. But generally that has not happened because the results have been positive in the last few fiscal years. Tim,
So-
anything that-
So
Okay.
there's a positive balance, Tim?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep, and we did, you know, we were approved for some capital this year that we, you know, we purchased some solid waste and recycling vehicles as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah,
I
sure.
have
Thank
a
you, Mr.
question.
Chairman.
I have a question. Mr. Abraham, it looks like from these charts, the department has some flexibility in how it increases its revenue for this division. Is that correct?
Yes, no question. I would say that there is a need to increase revenue, but there are options, I'd say several options for that to happen. Yes.
All right, thank you. I'd like to make a comment. If I understand correctly, Tim, the trash bag program is a way to encourage a reduction in waste that's going to the landfill. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the corollary to that question then is, to the extent that we keep trash bags, the increase in trash bags to a minimum and increase the other fees, that continues to emphasize recycling and reduction in the waste stream to the landfill, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I have no other questions.
Also, you know, I know we looked at some kind of comparisons of other communities, whether on the program fees, which we currently charge $90, as well as the bag fees. And Matt, did you have any of those available? And
No.
I know we had looked at some of the, and we're you know, our fees are pretty low, which is great, and we like to keep our fees low for our residents. The you know, I know other communities pay well over $200 currently for the program, and our bag fees are low. We charge $5 for a 5-pack, so it's $1 for a small bag and $2 for a large bag. And other communities are paying above $10 and $15 for the small bags, as well as over $20 for the large bags. But our goal is to keep those bag prices as low as we can and work more towards, the program fees, the one-time fee.
Yeah, personally, I live in Middleborough and I pay $90 a quarter for our curbside trash pickup. And our bag fees for small are $13 for a pack of 5 and then $26 for a pack of 5. So
Right.
Yeah, and I live in Ashland. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think mine are in line with what Stephanie's paying. So the general theme being that we've noticed that Dartmouth's fees are below, and in some cases well below, the fees in other communities that we've looked at.
All right, thank you. Please continue.
Next slide, please. So this is kind of a summary slide of the different options. I'll just run through this real quick. The tables on this slide were found on each of the other slides we looked at. It's just looking at estimated annual charges for we'll call it maybe the average user for each of the options for the next 5 years based on the changes that we've outlined. But let's focus more on the writing on the comments on the left here. Option 1 is just the trash fee increase only. And under this scenario, we have the resident paying $304 in FY30, which is just about 5 years from now, which is an increase of $110 when compared to what is currently being paid. Now, I just want to mention one other quick thing about this slide. The numbers that we are currently quoting, these dollar amounts, do not include any amounts for the transfer station charges. It was hard for us to gauge what individuals pay for that, if they pay anything at all. So we kind of ignored that on the slide, but just keep in mind that there could be additional trash fees for anyone that does bring items to the transfer station that would add to these dollar amounts that we're talking about. So we're focused just on the trash fee only and the bag fees with these comments. So again, $110 increase, option 1, that's trash fee only. Option 2 is all fees increase in the same year. We have that increase of being about $62 from FY26, or I should say currently, that's FY25 to FY30. Under that scenario, option 3 is all fees increase, but it was staggered with the focus initially on the trash bag fees. That's an increase of $114 from now until FY30. And option 4, which is the staggered one, but with the initial focus on the trash pickup fees, that would be an $82-ish increase over that period. So this just gives you a little bit of a comparison of the different options, what they look like from a dollar standpoint to users.
And if I may step in here as well to comment on, Matt stated that, he didn't, have what, someone might spend at the transfer station. And, we're looking at our transfer station fees now, and we've noticed, our fees are really low, and we've noticed a large influx of users, especially in the C&D material, a lot of mattresses, and our fees are low, and our disposal fees keep increasing. So we will be looking at that fee structure as well throughout the entire transfer station moving forward.
Okay, so we are transitioning away from the financial analysis on solid waste. Before we get to this slide, were there any other comments or questions related to what we've already discussed? So again, these are kind of options for your consideration for ways to increase revenue for the solid waste fund. Again, we've already kind of covered. I'll just make one additional comment. There is a need to increase revenues in the short term. So we just presented a few ways to do that, but we have a tool with the spreadsheet that we've been using to play around with different options. So we could even present more if it made sense to, but we thought that these ones kind of captured the different possibilities pretty well.
Thank you, Matt.
I'll just jump in real quick there as well. Any feedback is welcome. So we'd love to, tailor this to however you'd like to see the fees jump up a little bit.
Tim, I think the appropriate way to do this is to have you and your staff look through what you think are two, perhaps three alternatives that you want the board to consider, and bring that back to us far enough ahead of the budget process being finalized so we can consider this for next year.
Absolutely, that is the plan.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tim, could I get a copy of this report?
Absolutely, I have
So,
it.
I mean, this is a lot of information all at once and.
Yeah, and Tim, I think in the interest of public disclosure, this should be and any reports like this should be if they're not part of the document list on the agenda when the agenda is posted, they should be made part of the minutes.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're transitioning a little bit away from the solid waste financial analysis. It sounds like we have a little bit more work to do there. And eventually we'll settle on an option or options that the board can consider for rate change. Now we're transitioning to the interviews that have taken place. I believe Ben mentioned this in his opening comments today. We have met with several members of Department of Public Works and the different divisions to try and gain understanding of the work that they do, some of their past experiences. You know, as everyone on this meeting knows, there's some individuals that go way back with the town, and that was a really cool thing to hear throughout all these interviews. The longevity of some of the individuals and the camaraderie that they've built with their peers. We got that theme a lot from some people. So it was just fascinating talking to these people. But we wanted to talk to them about some of their challenges, some of the things that are great, some of the things that they feel are not so great, some of the ideas that they have for how to move forward, how they felt about the equipment that they had, how they felt about the needs that they had for additional equipment. We covered a lot of ground with these individuals. And we have long and lengthy notes related to these interviews. So what we tried to do for you today was to try and come up with some common things that we heard, some high-level comments related to that, and we've put that together onto this one slide that's before you now. But we also plan to provide additional information that's a little bit more detailed than this. So we just want to cover with you this morning just some common themes from these interviews, and we'll run through those now. So we'll focus on culture first. I mentioned camaraderie. We did feel that within small groups or within divisions, but not across the department as a whole. And morale was noted a few times to have been low in recent years within some of the groups, but not all. Policies and procedures. We heard that there was a little bit of a lack there of official policies and procedures. And in some cases, individuals may not know what those policies and procedures are or were, and that could be improved. Communication challenge amongst some subdivisions or maybe across the entire the entire DPW. We did get a sense that in some of the divisions that communication camaraderie was great, but then we have other people in the department who felt like the communication with everybody was a little bit lacking. Flow paths and expectations could be outlined a little bit better than they are now. Pay and benefits. The comment here is more focused on health insurance. That was something that we heard multiple times in the interviews about how weekly costs for health insurance has skyrocketed recently, noticeably by some individuals, and there was concern there. Reclassification, the work that was done a few years ago to try and reclass some individuals with both their pay and their positions. Generally, that was viewed as unsuccessful, or maybe another way to say it would be that there was frustration related to how that all worked out. for some individuals, as some felt that they were misclassified in the end. Maybe the title or the work that was noted that they do was misrepresented, and ultimately maybe they were paid less than they were prior, and there was frustration related to that. Additionally, some workers felt that they were not being recognized for their work and the value that they bring, and the reclass in general may have stymied growth for some individuals. HR, generally heard this comment a few times. There's a disconnect between DPW and DPW staff and HR in understanding of motivations or ideas around hiring and trying to bring people in. In some cases, maybe HR was looking for an individual that DPW thought was the incorrect way to look for it, and vice versa. So there can be definitely some better communication, better working together there to try and make sure that the right people are being focused on for hiring. And somewhat related to that is that there currently are staff openings, maybe several staff openings in certain divisions, services and infrastructure being one. We heard the large amount of openings for drivers was definitely an area for concern, and that sounds like that's been a long-term thing, not a short-term thing. And because of various reasons, some of which being opening initial pay for these individuals, the division has not been able to fill those positions, and that has been a big concern and continues to be. Also, I mentioned the job descriptions. We already mentioned that a little bit, but there's definitely been a disconnect there. Again, with DPW with HR understanding what the proper qualifications and experience might be for those positions. And lastly, equipment and technology. It's critical, and I think everyone on the call knows this, but just want to make sure we make this clear that it's critical to these divisions that they have the equipment and the technology that they feel like they need to do their jobs. And in some cases, that's been lacking or been slow to come by in recent years. So we heard that multiple times. It's important that town, that the division, that the board tries to prioritize as much as possible capital items so that the individuals can do the work that they need to do. So definitely the capital plan needs to be a priority going forward. I know that it is, but we just want to make sure that that's clear. And then also, and I want to add one other thing, and I feel like everyone here knows this, but just to, again, make it clear, the plant, the water pollution control plant is, it's obviously operating, but we heard from multiple people that it's a challenge to make it operate on a consistent basis. And there's definitely concern there with the current state of the plant and the we'll call the extreme need to either upgrade it or replace it. And I know that getting funding for that is not easy to come by, but there's very much concern there with the future of that plant and trying to do something about it. It was a lot of words. So any questions or comments related to this? Again, we just tried to focus on some common themes that we heard, and we threw it all on one slide for you. But these are some of the high-level things that we wanted to cover with you today.
Mr. LaBelle, do you have any questions or comments?
Just one quick one. Mr. Abrams, what cross-section of employees did you interview for, this efficiency interviews? Was it truck drivers, laborers, management staff, everybody?
I would say that for divisions that have a lot of employees, it was more the management. And then for people who work in the DPW building, it was basically everybody, including some of the admin staff there. But when we get into the individual divisions like water pollution control, services and infrastructure, more management level.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Abrahams, I have, first of all, I commend you for the amount of time it took to put this together. You and the team, the interviews sometimes are difficult, but I think in this case, because it's a third party coming in, this is essential information. I'm going to observe that the first three items, culture, policy, and procedures and communications, need to be addressed by the department management. And my sense is that needs to happen, begin now and continue as a collaborative effort. The last few, pay and benefits, reclassification, human resources, and equipment, are themes that involve other elements of the town. And we have heard, or at least I have heard, over and over in the last 3 years. And Tim, I think that we should discuss how to bring that information to the town, and whether this is something that we have a discussion at the select board with, or whether this is something we talk to the current town administrators about. But as a third party report that supports much of the concerns that you and your staff have had, as well as things that this board has dealt with and have expressed concerns about. This stuff, some of this stuff just needs to be addressed in a way that its effect on the department and the operation of the department is either made to go away or at least reduced. And the final one, equipment and technology, I'm going to interpret that. That sounds to me like somewhere in the budget process, the recommendations of this board are changed and do not show up for some reason or another before the voters at town meeting. And so important equipment and technology is delayed. And we need to have a conversation with the town administration about doing a better job in recognizing what the department's priorities are, and not simply arbitrarily taking things out of our recommendation before the budget is placed on the warrant. All right, that's the end of my screed. I'll leave it at that.
If I can add to that, I have discussed that moving forward, and this administration does definitely seem, acceptable to our priorities, and I think that shows in the fall town meeting, capital, that we were funded a good amount, but the previous 3 or 4 years we weren't. So.
Yeah, and I think the issue is not just full funding, but also priorities. Tim, my vision here is that when the new town administrator is hired, and I understand that process is ongoing, I think that this body of information ought to be an outline for a discussion with that new administrator early on. And my vision is that the first 3 items here are treated in a way that explains to him how the department is dealing with these issues. And the last one takes the last 4, take the form of recommendations for improvements, either formalizing what we're doing better with respect to equipment and capital improvement, but also making recommendations on how to deal with pay, reclassification, and human resources, and take advantage of the new administrator and being the first to explain how to make things better that's a huge opportunity for the department. And I think it would be incumbent on you to give some thought about what you're gonna share with that new administrator and shape his thinking about how to do a better job managing this town. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Mr. Abrahams, do you have any more slides?
Just one summary next step slide. And Mr. Chairman, I just want to make one additional comment. We met with, I think it was around 10 individuals for these interviews, and everyone was extremely cooperative and forthcoming for us, with us. And it was very much appreciative. You know, we didn't feel like there were cases where anyone was holding back or not sharing information with us. So we just wanted to give a quick kudos to the group for that, because we found it tremendous to work with these individuals on the interviews that we did. Okay.
Thank you. I think we need to find a way to give some positive feedback to them for their forthrightness. That's a big deal. Thank you.
Yep. Next steps. So where do we go from here? Review and adjust sanitation department fees based on provided feedback. We already discussed a game plan around that. Present proposed rates to the select board in the December-January timeframe. We'll see if we can try to keep to that. Set new solid waste rates to go into effect for the next fiscal year of FY26. It's important that we try and get there so that we can maintain revenues and keep them going forward for solid waste. And prepare a report outlining the summary of key themes from the interviews and provide recommendations on practices to consider altering to improve department efficiencies.
Mr. LaBelle, any further comments?
No, we've been down this road so many times before, Mr. Chairman. This is, you know, I don't disagree with any of this. I'm glad that you interviewed the employees. Another question, were the interviews done with more than one employee at a time, or was it always an individual employee?
Individual, except for one interview, which was done with two of the ladies in the front office at DPW. Otherwise, it was
Okay.
individual.
Okay. No, you know, again, as you just mentioned, you know, it will be a more pleasant experience to have new people from town hall to deal with, you know, with these issues. The morale in this department, when I started as a member of this board, has always been not very good. And it seems to have been an uphill struggle all the way.
It appears that the Abrahams and Western and Sampson team and the board are in agreement. So thank you very much. I find it challenging with the recommendations and the observations, but heartening that we're all basically seeing the same set of issues. So I think that's good. Anyway, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you
Tim,
for
is there
having us.
any further action we need to take on this?
No, like, as you know, this is kind of an intermediary presentation, so you know, they can continue to work, and we'll continue to meet and work with both Weston Sampson and Matt Abrahams.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, the next item is Connect to Protect Septic to Sewer MOA.
right.
Tim, what do you hear?
I was hoping to have a better update at this time. As we know, we've heard that Dan Goulart of the Buzzards Bay Coalition is moving on to another endeavor, leaving the Buzzards Bay Coalition, and currently a memorandum of agreement is being reviewed by town council. We found that it wasn't at the time, about a couple weeks ago when we were looking for it and asking council for it. So it is currently at town council. So hopefully, it's being expedited and we can get a decision on it.
All right. I want to make it very clear, I'm pretty disappointed that town council hasn't gotten to this item much sooner. I'll leave it at that. Mr. LaBelle, do you have any comments?
No, no, it's a good project. It's a good program. I hope it moves forward and comes to fruition.
Yeah, I agree. All right, with that, any members of the public have any comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to item C, Hathaway Road Sewer Extension. Tim?
All right. Also, I was hoping to have some more updates for you, but currently, it's the last meeting I updated the board on the sewer evaluation that was completed by Stantec, requiring upgrades to the existing sewer collection system and the north pump station, sewer pump station, to allow for the additional capacity for flows and on a proposed development on Hathaway Road. The board had asked for a cost associated with the recommended upgrades. Currently, I have approximately $72,000 in roadway reconstruction for Hathaway Road after the sewer upgrades are completed. Our engineering they've been extremely busy in the field, but they're working on takeoffs and estimating the replacement of the sewer and upgrade of the sewer line, and water pollution control superintendent is working on obtaining estimates for the upgrades at the north pumping station, so I can present that to the board hopefully at the next meeting.
All right, so what you gave us in the package is a partial?
Yeah, that's a partial. That's just the basically the roadway reconstruction costs after the work after the sewer upgrades are complete.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Tim, I'm a little bit behind the eight ball here. I've been
Oh, sure.
kind
So
of,
yep.
not involved for a little bit. This sewer extension,
Nope. There's a development proposed on Hathaway Road, a large multi-residential.
Right.
So we had Stantec review the flows and evaluate the existing collection system from that site all the way to the treatment facility. And they had recommendations on upgrading a section about 640 linear feet of existing 8-inch sewer on Hathaway Road, upgrading that to 10-inch sewer to create the sufficient capacity for the flows for this development.
okay,
And they also evaluated the north pumping station, which will be taking additional flows from multiple developments, newer developments in town, including this, and they recommended also upgrading the pumps in that station and some other of the pipes and
okay.
to
So
increase
I
it.
guess my question is, who's responsible for these upgrades? The town or the developers?
It all depends on the development, right? So if it's an affordable housing development, which is being proposed,
Okay, so it's a 40B then, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, there have been other proposals at that site. There's been, over 55, which is, didn't comply with zoning, but affordable housing 40B doesn't have to comply with zoning, so.
okay, so these costs are gonna be borne by the department.
Possibly, and we would like to discuss this with the developer, once we get all the costs together.
All right,
and
because
moving
these,
forward.
this value here of 71,312 is just for the road.
Just for the road, which
All right,
which
I
is
mean,
currently under moratorium, which we reconstructed a few years ago, so.
Yeah, great. So 640 linear feet of new 10-inch and pump station upgrades. We're looking at a much larger number.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
all right, I'm just trying to get it in
Yeah,
my
yep,
mind straight.
yep. And I expect to have those numbers by the next meeting.
Okay,
All right, I have no other comments or questions. Any comments or questions by the public? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item. Item D, water meter system upgrade. Tim?
Sure, so, last meeting, we discussed, proposed, agreement, to bring in another consultant to assist with, transitioning over, from our biannual billing for water and sewer to our, quarterly billing. That, that agreement was not approved by the board, and it was suggested that we work directly with Munis on this. So I did look at the costs from Munis and speaking with our finance director, Munis charges about $4,500 per day to work on something like this. And mostly they'd be doing the work rather than the training. So there was another option that we looked at was the town also works with another consultant that does Munis training and works on some of the applications. So we have started working with the consultant at a much lower rate to help transition over to the monthly billing. I mean the quarterly billing, and as well we're also working with our IT department and Styles company to transition any outstanding accounts that have not been updated to the new endpoints for the cellular endpoints from the old Read Center software over to the new software, so we can we will no longer be using the old software, and we can start moving towards the quarterly billing for next year.
So do you anticipate asking us for approval of additional contracts, or is this within the existing scope of contracts we've already approved or the town has, and do you anticipate asking for more funding?
No, we're working within the scope and within the current funding.
Okay.
what's the
Mr. DeBelle, any
timeline for this?
questions?
I
I
think
mean, what are we anticipating moving to quarterly billing?
we're looking at the fiscal year, so get this for July 1st.
Currently, we have 500 meters that we need to continue with, finishing off with the cellular endpoints. So other than that, that's all we have. So we're working daily on those, getting them into people's houses and taking care of that. So moving forward, I'm hoping by January, end of January, we're done.
Okay, I still, I want to, I'm like a drum beat here. I want to keep saying this. How difficult or expensive would it be once we move to quarterly to go to monthly billing? I mean, most people pay their bills on a monthly basis. Paying a bill on a quarterly basis is sometimes a big hit. Semi-annual is, a lot of people get that bill and go, oh my God. I think the town should be moving in that direction. And how expensive do we anticipate that to be? And are we capable with the equipment that we have, Steve, to do that?
Oh yeah, with the new cellular system, we should be able to do that, no problem. Monthly.
Okay.
Again, it's just sending out the bills is the cost. The personnel you're going to need to, at town hall, in the collector's office now, they're going to be getting billed more often than, biannually. So that's I understand, Ron, believe me, I know what you're talking about, and, we can work towards that. Myself and, Sharon at the collector's office, we can work towards figuring out what that's gonna need and how much personnel we're gonna need to do that, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's an expense, if it's an effort, but people budget monthly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep, exactly. I agree.
And I agree that, once we move over to that, to the quarterly, we can assess, moving forward and transitioning over to monthly as well.
Okay, I just wanted to get that in there. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, any other questions or comments? Any comments or questions by the public? Hearing none. Tim, the next item is item E, Granite City Crushing.
All right, so I'll give a kind of a historical update for Ron, because you weren't here last meeting as well. So, you know, we on August 22nd, Granite City had worked within the right of way on Reed Road, and we brought them before the board, discussed moving forward, and I did, send a number of items in the process to move forward with any work, whether it's in the right of way or on utilities. On October 15th, they were tapping the water main without proper notification and scheduling through our department. So I did send out a letter with potential fines of the violation to both Granite City Crushing and First Thomas LLC, which is the management company and partners with Granite City Crushing. The fine from the 8/22 violation were paid. No fines for this violation were paid, but we did receive an email from John Bavonic of First Thomas LLC stating that they emailed us saying that they were going to be scheduling the work to tap the water main, and unfortunately they didn't actually schedule the work with the DPW. They scheduled it with the police and with the tapping company, but not with us. So we did send our staff out there at the time, and they asked them to stop. They had already done the work, so they ended up covering the work up. We asked them, and in the letter that I had previously sent, that we needed a construction meeting. So after this point, they did schedule a construction meeting. We all met, but Manny Soares was extremely volatile at this meeting. But we did have special counsel. We had the building commissioner at the meeting. We had our engineering. We had highway superintendent, and Gary Furrow was at the meeting as well. Outlined what was needed, and they did continue. To date, they've installed about 1,200 linear feet of water that has been inspected. We do have engineering out there, and they did tap the connect into the sewer main in Route 6, and they've extended the sewer across Route 6 and into the site. The engineer on site has said that there have been no problems during the construction, but getting to that point, there were a lot of problems. The board chose to not take any action last meeting because of the agenda item did not describe an action item. It was the chairman discussed that it was only an update or a discussion, so the board could not take any action.
All right. So Tim, where can you give us a sense of where we might be headed, or are we finished with this item?
I'm just updating the board of where we are today. They continue to work, and it seems like they're doing the work and meeting our specifications on the work.
So do they owe us a fine?
So we had sent a letter with potential fines, but I know the board didn't take any action on approving a fine at the last meeting. So typically the fine is for doing the work without a permit is I believe it's $300 plus $300 per day until it's resolved.
Well, I mean, I've always maintained that we are public servants. And our job is to work with the public to make things happen in an appropriate way.
Right.
But the rules are the rules. And, you know, I'm sorry that Mr. Soers has a tantrum because he doesn't like to follow the rules and regulations of the town of Dartmouth. And I don't think you should get away with it.
I'd also like to mention that I did reach out to the AG's office regarding agenda items and action items on an agenda, and they did respond pretty quickly, said that open meeting law does not require that a vote be explicitly included on a meeting notice. And it's foreseeable that a public body may take action and hold a vote following a discussion of a topic listed on a meeting notice. So.
Yeah, well, as a board member, I'm here to support the Public Works Department. You know, if you're satisfied that this is a dead issue, okay. But I just want, you know, the other board members and the Public Works staff to know that they shouldn't be browbeat by anybody in the town of Dartmouth.
Absolutely.
We're public servants. We're there to serve, not be browbeat.
And I think if,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
if we allow them to work, I think a fine should be imposed for at least the work being done on the first day, without proper scheduling. So
Tim, I think if you want to bring that back to the board, and indicate that it's for discussion and possible action, I'm comfortable with that. I agree with Ron completely about making a point that the public may disagree with the professional staff, but that needs to be done in a courteous and civil manner.
well, the board can take action on a discussion.
Yeah, right. But I think if you want to bring it back for discussion and action. Let's if your recommendation is going to be to impose a fine, make that very clear on the agenda. I don't want to get into it with anybody's lawyers about whether, you know, we had appropriate noticing. It's very simple to say discussion and potential action. You know,
Okay.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Anything else on this item?
No, just that the AG's office also stated that although it's good practice for a notice to specify a vote will be taken, it is indeed, if it is indeed anticipated, we have consistently explained that only the topic need be listed on the notice, not the course of action.
Right, I understand. All right. Next item is item F, Dartmouth Tree Committee. Do we have a member of the committee present? We do.
We do. We have Ann Parson is here, and also Andrea Langhauser. They've been working on the tree bylaw as well as adopt a tree program. I met with them this week to discuss both, and I had submitted some comments and revision for the bylaw and adopt a tree program. Ann or Andrea?
Yeah, who on the tree committee would like to make a presentation?
I'll give a brief introduction, if I might, and then hand it over to Andrea. We did meet on Monday for an open meeting about both the bylaw in progress as well as the adopt a tree, which you'll hear more about. And the committee gave approval for the draft of the bylaw and adopt a tree. So we're looking to go forward, get your approval from here, go on to Select Board, Finance Committee, and other committees. It's very exciting. Andrea and her subcommittee have worked really hard on the bylaw. And I just want to say one thing. It seeks to customize, clarify, and amplify the laws of the Massachusetts General Chapter 87, which few people know it exists, but it protects public street trees. So this bylaw is not seeking to expand on that law. It's basically clarifying that law, and I think that's really important. I'm going to hand this over to Andrea now.
Andrea?
Thank you very much. Can I share my screen? I've got a very brief presentation to share.
Looks like you are now sharing.
And it looks like I am in the wrong view. Let's go to slide.
That's all right. We can see
You
how
can
you're
see
on.
it?
That's no
Where's
big deal.
slideshow? Okay,
It's
there
big
it is.
enough. We can read it, I think.
Okay, very good. Thank you very
There you
much.
go.
With us, in addition to Anne, is Dartmouth Tree Committee member Susan McLaren, who is also on the subcommittee and absolutely could not have done any of this work without her very good research and support and teamwork. So we were last here in August, and we've been doing a sort of a work. We've been doing a listening session with other boards, including the planning board, and we've now got a draft language that we've presented to you, and we got some really great feedback from Tim. So after you gave us conceptual approval in August, we've made a few changes. What we've decided is not to expand the definition of public shade tree as it's found in the state law, Mass General Law 87. We had considered including those trees on private land that extend out over the pavement, decided not to. We also are keeping the concept of setback trees strictly as it's written in the law, which is that the tree warden has the authorization with the consent of a landowner to plant trees up to 20 feet back from the public way. But we don't go into any expansion as to who owns them, who maintains them, what happens if the tree needs to be removed in the future. We're just completely silent on that. We just want to get into the public, into the Dartmouth forum, that trees can be planted back off of the public way, and for a lot of good reasons, the trees tend to be more successful there. So it's something we'd like to encourage. The Adopt a Tree program does rely heavily on planting off of the public way to protect the tree. We haven't made any changes to the proposed tree fund or the local fines. We're using the same local fine process that's used by DPW and other ways, and in other departments. We do take the state law allows you to have a permit review for cut, trim, or removing public shade trees. We've expanded that public review to include the drip line of a public shade tree. And we look at activities underneath the drip line. We see this as something that's worth expanding upon. And we also, based on really good comment we got from you, do have a tree replacement schedule proposed for the removal of a public shade tree. We did add to the draft bylaw, giving the tree warden oversight over town trees. Those are trees on public land that aren't managed or owned by the DPW. The way the draft, you have the draft in front of you, hopefully, and the way it's written is we say that the tree warden can take action for other trees if it is requested by the department or the select board. At the request of Tim, given that he has many roles beyond just being the tree warden, would like to keep the concept in the bylaw, but speak to it only in a consulting role, that other boards and departments should manage their own trees, and they certainly can consult with the tree warden, but we we're not recommending that he take a more active position in that. So if you don't have any questions on those changes, I'd like to expand on a discussion of the activities requiring a tree permit. The state law says that you can cut, trim, or remove a public shade tree as long as you get written permit from the tree warden. And if there is a removal that requires a public hearing before, in our town, the Board of Public Works. We want to clarify that if you choose to plant a tree in the public way, that you should get a permit for that. It may or may not require a hearing. And we're speaking of engaging in construction, demolition, or excavation activities under the drip line of a public shade tree. And you're familiar that a drip line is the outer canopy of the shade tree. And we chose to speak to permits for basically disturbing the earth under a shade tree, because in the drip line, because that tends to be where the critical root zone is, and you can damage and actually kill a tree if you're not careful in that review. So we then also, in addition to having that that permit review, which we would implement through the building permit. We are also saying definitively that a tree may be removed. It's determined to be a hazardous tree. And this is a definition that we established in the draft bylaw. It's dead, disease, or injured is what you would think of as a hazardous tree. And certainly the board would allow the removal of that. But we're also talking about trees that could interfere with existing utilities, sidewalks, streets, or other existing improvements, or it's dangerously close to an existing structure, or is causing disruption of a public utility service, drainage, passage problems upon the right-of-way, or poses a threat to pedestrian or vehicular safety, or is harming the health or condition of other trees on the same site. So we create this definition of hazardous tree that we hope takes into consideration those instances when you would think it was appropriate to remove an otherwise healthy tree. It isn't all instances when people want to remove a healthy tree, but we think it's those instances when it's in the best interest to do so. And so we would certainly appreciate any comment you have on that, because what we're saying is if you determine the tree to be a hazard, then it can be removed. If it's an otherwise healthy tree that is causing a hazard, we ask that it be replaced. So we speak to the conditions of the permit. Right now, under state law, you have no mitigation for removing of a tree. You might negotiate it, but you don't have any requirement to do so. So we've refined the proposal that you saw in August, that if you're removing an otherwise healthy tree, you should replant based on the size of the tree, or pay a comparable dollar value into the tree fund. And we're using a small, medium, and large process for what type of replacement is required. We spoke with Tim about this, and we think that the small to medium-sized tree that with a diameter at breast height of 4 inches to 12 inches, you should replant a single tree. If it's a more medium size to large tree with a 12-inch to 24-inch DBH, you should replant 2 trees either on the site or in an area that the tree warden finds acceptable. and if it's greater than 24 inches, replant what you can, but the overall cost of the replacement should be the full value of the tree. And rather than give a dollar value for that, we said as determined by a certified arborist based on standards of the industry. We do suggest that when there is work, construction work, underneath the drip line of a tree, a public shade tree, not any tree, but a public shade tree, that instead of removing, sometimes you just need to protect the tree. And that Tim, as a tree warden, should give some conditions under how to protect that tree so that it isn't harmed in the construction, excavation, or demolition. So we're talking only about public shade trees, but in this permit, the drip line can extend onto private property. So that's the extent of our review on private property. Those are the two biggest concepts. We did refine the local fees. We put a dollar value of $300 as the local fee for any single violation. And we also say that taking this issue of measures to protect trees, well, if they don't take the measures, or if something bad happens on the site, then they can, tree warden is given the authority to go out and ask them to repair damage, or if they don't do it, he can repair the damage themselves. So those are the two biggest concepts. And if you've reviewed the draft bylaw, I don't know if you have any comments. We tried to. What do you think? Do we hit it? We're looking for approval the first time. So.
Andrea, I'd like to add one mention of something that came up on Monday. I think it's important to realize that this bylaw is going to request that when a site plan is drawn up, it should include the location of street trees and drip line. We call them drip line trees within the public right of way. Tim agreed to this. Am I describing that right, Tim and Andrea? Because this would be important improvement over the current situation where street trees aren't recognized, I believe, in site plans. Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, so, a lot of site plans are multi-jurisdictional review. Sometimes DPW doesn't even receive review on some development, sometimes additions and smaller development, or sometimes we're our reviews are bypassed by some departments. And so this would have to be, also looked at by maybe the building department or planning on parking plans, to require this, because, if, a lot of times if we don't get the plan to review, then we can't require that, and to go out into the field to make sure that they are adding public shade trees and adding any drip line trees onto the site plan. Yeah,
the way it's presently, the way this is presently written, it says the applicant shall submit a complete application and filing fee if necessary.
Right.
And so complete application, certainly a complete application as required on the website of DPW's website. So the application requirement would include a site plan. I didn't change that. I didn't suggest a change right. Oops. I didn't suggest a change of that language right now because I wanted to talk to our current building commissioner. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you still want to see the screen share? I just.
I don't need it.
Is that, okay, okay. So, I didn't change the language, suggest to change the language yet. I want to talk to the building commissioner. The former building commissioner had suggested to our board, our subcommittee, that, it could be, it's an electronic filing system, and he could set up a trigger so that if work was within 20 feet of the public way, it would automatically require the tree warden. And it would be, and I wanted to get the building commissioner's feedback as to how to modify the site plan. Obviously, it needs to show the public shade trees and the extent of the drip line. And there's a real value to putting that type of language in the bylaw to give the building commissioner the support he needs to require that. But I think we should speak to the building commissioner and see how he wants the language to be written. There's a lot in this bylaw, not a lot, but there is deference to the coordination needed with other departments and boards. So I'd like your feedback on putting site plans right into the bylaw, or how much flexibility you want to give the building commissioner.
Mr. LaBelle, do you have any comments?
No, I think the board has done a great job, the committee, excuse me. I know I worked a little bit with Ann on some of this, and I guess they've narrowed this down to something that, you know, once the other departments and boards weigh in on this, I think would be a great plus, you know, for the town. And you know, shade trees are important.
So if that's all, there's one other part of this, which is the adopted tree program. I know you've got, yeah.
If I may, before you give the adopted tree, I think I support the notion of emphasizing coordination, and that includes consulting with the building official about how to include shade trees and trees with drip lines extending over the road surface as part of the initial application. I think the sooner issues are flagged in the land use and permitting process, the better. So I leave it to the tree committee to work that out.
Thank you. Before we do go to adopted tree, I'm getting a real good sense that you guys like this bylaw, and you're giving us flexibility to get the language right by coordinating with other boards. But we are going to go to town meeting in the spring, and so we're going to need a warrant article. And I know the tree committee is certainly willing to be the sponsor of that warrant article, but can I be so bold as to ask if you would co-sponsor that warrant article, because it's really falling on your lap for implementation.
I don't have any experience about co-sponsoring warrant articles. I don't think I have any objections, but I think you should clear that process with both the town administrator and the town council. And then I think then we've got a context for doing something that I personally don't have any experience with. If that's okay. In other words, just make sure that it's that we're not setting a precedent and we're doing something that is appropriate.
That's fabulous. That gives me the flexibility to say, if I'm not misreading you, it gives me the flexibility to say that you guys are willing to, if that's the right, you know, process to follow.
Well, as a public board, we're willing to consider anything within our purview. All right. Ms. Parson, would you like to go on to the adopted tree proposal?
Sure. I meant to say good morning to everybody first and to thank you for having us back so often. It's very exciting to get this bylaw through. The adopted tree program is contingent on the bylaw getting final approval. I'm just going to give a brief description of it. I believe you have that one sheet in front of you that describes it. It's the program will encourage residents to request and adopt a tree that will be planted in the public right-of-way in front of their home on town property, or planted up to 20 feet back from the right-of-way. And that's otherwise known as a setback tree. So I've met with Gary and Donna Fernandez about funding. We really want to request $15,000 to $20,000 a year for annual funding for the program from the town budget. They've recommended that DPW put in this request, and which will be included annually as a separate line item within the DPW budget. This funding will allow residents to buy a tree at a reduced rate, excuse me. And while the Dartmouth Tree Committee will create all the forms and stir up publicity for this program, it will be up to the DPW to hire a contractor who will be responsible for the delivery and planting of the tree. Once the tree, and this is really important, once the tree is planted, the resident who has requested the tree will be responsible for its watering and care for at least 2 years. There are many of these adopted tree programs going on. I think a big plus is that we don't have to go out and keep watering trees when they're planted. Our Dartmouth Tree Committee has planted about 20 trees here and there at schools, mostly. And what we find is we constantly have gone out and gotten water bags for them. It's hard to make people water trees. And so this way, with a resident requesting a tree, adopting it, they're going to take care of it, we hope. They'll be buying it at a minimum price. Again, that's because we'll be having $15,000 to $20,000 will help reduce the price of the tree and the installation. That's in a nutshell. Andrea, Tim, did I miss anything that's important?
No, I think you hit it all. I think, we have to get eventually get a cost of the planting and of the trees to figure out what the what the discount would be, basically how it would be subsidized, by the annual budget.
We the gal who is helping me with this most, Ruth Furman, we have a plan, and it depends again on the money coming in, that some of these trees are going to be given away free for the asking to residents who live sort of in a heat island situation where they don't have trees, where trees are really needed and necessary along the street. We really like to do some of this free giveaway. Others will be paid for by residents. We haven't figured this out. We need to be assured of getting that 15 to 20 grand first. And we might have other monies coming in, donations towards this program, which would boost up the number of trees. New Bedford has this program. New Bedford has 2 programs, one big, huge program where, as Ron knows, they're planting hundreds, if not thousands, of new trees. But they have a smaller program, an adopted tree program. They get about 100 requests a year. So, any questions?
No, Tim, when you get a little further into this, could you come back to us and explain the administration of an adopted tree program? In other words, how are the requests going to come in? What kind of form? Who's going to review it? Who's going to manage the contractor? Those kinds of questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ron, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I like to see this unfold like that, but there'll be questions down the road on how this is gonna play out. What's the cost of installation, the trees, types of trees? Can this be put in as a line item in the budget? How would you take outside contributions and use that? There's a lot of questions, but I think, the committee's moving in a positive direction. And I think I still, we'll say this every time, it's a great program. I think it will bear fruit in the long term if you do it right.
Mr. Almy, I have one comment.
Sure.
I can't help but go back briefly to the solid waste discussion because something stood out so much. I wanted to tell a little anecdote. There's a woman who lives in New Bedford. She's the head of the local Audubon chapter. And all the materials that come into her home, she reduces, recycles, and reuses. To the point that she only sends 3 big bags to the landfill a year.
Wow.
And I was surprised not to hear any of that discussion, but maybe you've talked about reuse, recycling, and reducing. It's so important. We just had this topic come up at New Bedford Science Cafe, which I run. We had that last week. And Marissa, who's the recycling guru in New Bedford and Dartmouth, talked about the importance of this. And it's being really organized at, drop-off places. So I just hope you'll talk more about those 3: reuse, recycle, reduce.
Absolutely. And just for your records, since we've implemented the pay as you throw program, we reduced our solid waste to the landfill 40 to 45%.
Great.
Yeah, and kept our fees low.
And kept our fees low. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, and the emphasis on throw as you go and having an accessible and an affordable and in some ways free transfer station encourages people to recycle. I know personally, I have taken styrofoam, which is a problem material, and is now accepted by the transfer station. And that particular waste stream is starting to increase, if I understand correctly.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe there's some opportunity to expand the public information side of this. I will say, however, that the Public Works Department's doing a pretty good job as far as I can tell. Can we do better? Always, and we should try.
Yeah.
Tim, what percentage of the Crapo Hill landfill waste stream are we responsible for? Roughly.
We're roughly 15%.
15%. And so the sensitivity that the town of Dartmouth has to being able to access that landfill is that while we're only 15% of the waste stream, if that system is not available to us, our cost goes way up. And so whatever plans there are to responsibly expand and keep in operation that landfill are very important to us right now.
Absolutely. And prior to the pay-as-you-throw program, we had a higher percent, of the landfill use. But since our reduction, we only use about 15%.
Right. Okay, any other comments? I will also add, if there's anything we can do, I realize that in particular, the media doesn't respect town boundaries. And so if there's anything in our program, Ms. Parson, that you think can help any of our neighbors with their efforts to, as you say, reduce, recycle, then by all means, let Tim know.
I-
Because that, you know, that level of regional cooperation is very important.
You know, one other comment, Magnolia, who's the communication person, wonderful lady at Town Hall, had talked about doing a newsletter coming out of Town Hall. I think it would be so valuable to have something coming out once a month. I mean, Dartmouth Week is doing a good job, but it's communication again. And just a one sheet thing talking about various things that people can do. It wouldn't take much. Maybe it should come out of, poor Tim doesn't need anything out more on your desk, but you know, I don't know. It should be coming out of Town Hall so people have better understanding. There are different new programs for recycling going on that people don't know about that much.
So do I hear you volunteering to work on the first newsletter?
I'm tempted. I as a writer, I'm
Magnolia?
tempted, but let me think about it.
Make it focus it on the work of the tree committee.
Okay.
I mean, you might as well, if you've got a vision and you want to see it out there in public, take your vision and, you know, make that the shape of it. Why not? And maybe eventually that newsletter could be an enclosure in the monthly water bill. Who knows?
That would be cool. We talked about something like that. Part of this, and not to extend, you've got a long meeting, but is to have one person a month do one. I wouldn't want to do it all 12 months.
Mhm.
I certainly agree, but somebody's got to be first.
Okay.
And I recommend working with the district. You know, they've been great. They do issue a lot of information through social media. And you know, they have a lot of great information as well.
Good.
Yeah, and you might, for example, the second sheet might be on food waste disposal, since that's a new program.
Yep.
So, all right. Any other comments or questions on tree issues?
Yes, I do.
Yes, sir.
So it's unclear to me, is there any condition or circumstance where the town might require a homeowner to take down a hazardous tree that hangs over the drip line, hangs over the road?
So, if I can jump into that. So typically, if we deem a tree hazardous, and it's on private property, but overhanging the town right away, we will submit a letter to that resident. If it's beyond their means at the time to remove the tree, we will request permission to go and remove anything overhanging that the town boundary that is deemed hazardous.
Okay, yeah, I'm just concerned because I'm looking at the trees in the village. They're huge and they're on private and they're on the public road. But to hire a crane, it's $3,000 to $7,000 to take down these trees.
Right.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, moving to our new business portion of the agenda. We have a presentation by AECom on the Cedardale monitoring.
So,
Do I have someone who's going to make that presentation?
So we recently renewed our contract with AECom to continue monitoring the Cedardale pond levels as well as multiple other groundwater wells that we have in town. There was a question by one of the board members at that time of why do we have to continue monitoring? Isn't the project complete? And you know why? So, you know, I had spoken with Doug DiNatale. He's here. He's a senior hydrogeologist with AECom. He's been working in this field for over 40 years and was working with the town on this for multiple years. And he is here to kind of answer that question. And also in talking to Doug, he's looking at recommending some upgrades to some of the equipment that is kind of older and outdated, as well as some concepts, management practices that he's been kind of looking at over, for not just for Dartmouth, but kind of for all municipal wells throughout the country. So, looking at the past, the history of municipal drinking water wells and current and looking far into the future on how we, protect the wells. So, and just, so this is kind of just an informative of why and what we're doing to monitor. And, so, we probably won't be answering a lot of technical questions, but, if you do have any questions at the end, we'll do our best.
Well, yeah, thanks, Tim. And just further introduction. So as Tim says, I've been in this industry for 40 years can you all hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yep, I can,
Okay.
yep.
As a hydrogeologist, and I've worked with in the town of Dartmouth for 25 years. So I've got quite a history with Steve and Tim, and before them, Dave Hickox and Dave Bernier. And and I was also a water commissioner for over 20 years, so I have some sensitivity to you guys, your challenges. So let me just share this. Can I think you have to allow me to share this.
Yeah,
Dartmouth Communications, can you allow sharing, please?
He has
Mr.
permissions now.
you're all set, Doug.
Okay, so is that
No.
hold control to select multiple windows? I don't want to do that.
Right?
Is that visible
We
now?
can see the presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
And if you, yeah,
I really,
there you go.
I always feel like the Wizard of Oz, he's getting in the balloon and they say, come back. And he says, I can't come back. I don't know how this thing works. So that I feel like that a lot with a lot of new technology. I don't know how this thing works. So, so yeah, thanks, Tim, for the introduction. And I just wanted to start with kind of an overview of we've been doing at Cedar Dell. Like this map here shows the newly constructed to the north. This is Cedar Dell Lake here. And as a condition of the town's water management permit, the town is required to monitor water levels in Cedar Dell Lake to evaluate whether and to what extent pumping of the Violetta wells and the Pinelli wells might influence water levels at Cedar Dell Lake. So we have a network of monitoring and observation wells, one in the lake itself behind Mr. Costa's property, a couple on Alden Ave here, and then a couple that are closer to the pumping wells. And we have been monitoring this since 2019, and I have some results to show you that are graphical that I think will help. So here is the year, we monitor April to October, the dry season or the summer season, when pumping tends to be higher and evaporation tends to be higher as well. So in this case here, April to October of 2022, we pumped no water, the town pumped no water out of Violetta or Pinelli, zero water. In this graph here is precipitation. this graph here, the orange dots represent the levels in Cedar Del Lake, and as you can see, they decline. This is April over here on the corner, and this is the end of October. This blue well here, that is one of the wells that is on Alden Ave. I think that's the one that's next to your sewer pumping station towards the end of the road. And then the green is on the corner of Old Westport Road and Alden Ave. This well here, this other dark blue one, is a reference well in Lakeville, which is, for comparison purposes. So just to go through the monitoring that was done. So the lake levels, as is typical, decline starting in April, and this gets to August, as do the groundwater levels. They're declining, again, reminding you that there's no pumping at Violetta or at Pinelli. So this is a regular pattern. In the summertime, water levels decline. In this case here, the water level in Cedar Del Lake was within 1/10 of a foot of being dry. And at this point here, I don't know whether you're seeing my cursor.
We can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, and then it started to rain. This is an almost 2-inch rainfall, and then we had more rain in here. These are over 1 inch. These are all over 1 inch of rainfall, and that seems to have prevented the lake from drying up. Again, no pumping. And just to go back, here's 14 inches of rain between August and October. Last year, we did the same thing. As I say, this is just the regular part of monitoring what the town is doing. In this case, between April and October 2023, 1 million gallons a day was pumped out of Pinelli and the Violetta wells. But because of the extreme rainfall starting in June over here, the lake levels started to decline, but they never dried out. The lake never dried out. In fact, this shows that there was 0.7 of a foot of water in the lake. It's not a very deep lake anyway. 3 or 4 feet, I think, is maybe in the middle of the lake. It's deeper, but where this monitoring point is 80 feet from the shore. So from this from this data, I think it seems as though the lake levels are rainfall dependent and not pumping dependent. One last, and by the way, if please interrupt if you have any questions, because I know it's probably a lot of new information. It seems as though the rainfall is the water levels are rainfall dependent. Now, this is something Tim and I and Steve have talked about. What we currently have is we're monitoring this point. The DPW goes out and measures it every 2 weeks. These other points are monitored electronically. The equipment that we're using is probably not properly suited for this application. They've got solar panels to recharge the batteries that they're monitoring electronically 2 or 3 times a day. It also has to go to the cell service. It's the signals transmitted to the cell service, and this is not a really good system. It's not really working out for the town. There's a third party, and so I've recommended to Steve and Tim that we replace or update the electronic monitoring equipment, and I think it'll be a much slicker, more efficient system that'll eliminate this third party. For number one, it'll eliminate solar panels, and a lot of these areas are shaded. So I wanted to get that in there because Tim asked me to bring that up. So you know, I use this term asset management. I mean, monitoring is part of asset management, and this monitoring is pretty inexpensive, but the knowledge always appreciates in value, and I think it can erase some debate around complicated issues like this. Okay, so
Do we open up any questions on the monitoring at this point?
I have one question. Is the monitoring done within the lake level only, or do you have a well that goes deeper into the sediment that would suggest whether there's the lake is losing water or perhaps gaining water from the underlying materials?
So let me go back to this. So here, to answer your question directly, it's only monitoring the lake level.
Okay.
Okay. This well here, the blue, is 91. So that's at your sewer pumping station on Alden Ave. So this is actually water level. This is elevation. So that's this is 92 feet, 90 feet. So the groundwater level just west of the lake is lower by about a foot. So
Okay.
we would, you know, we don't actually know the dynamics of that because we don't have it, as you say, we don't have a groundwater level and a surface water level. But since it's kind of higher in the drainage area, I would suspect that at least in the wintertime, it would probably be recharging the groundwater. It would probably be recharging in the summertime when the levels drop. Well, just solely by these, you know, this monitoring point and this monitoring point, I would say it probably continues to discharge downward, collects water. There's a lot of muck, and I think Mr. Costa might have reported to us that there's probably at least in some areas 8 to 10 feet of sediment, just dead organic vegetation in the bottom of the lake that sort of you know it allows the lake levels to sort of be suspended. So that would be my expectation, that the lake levels are higher than the groundwater level.
Yeah, that makes sense given the location of the lake and the watershed.
Right. And it's also, you know, you've got UMass Dartmouth up to the east. So rainstorms, I would suspect, you know, would you know, if there's any sheet runoff, I would probably move towards the lake.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So
Mr. Chairman?
moving on to these other things that, you know, after you
Excuse me,
spend.
Doug, one
Sorry, go
second,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Did somebody?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so you stated that the lake bottom is 8 or 10 feet of mud, but actually the bottom is not level or flat or even cone shaped. This is a spring-fed pond, and it's got areas where the springs come through. There's circular areas. One of the largest ones is 40 feet in diameter. There's another one that's located down near the former ice house. And this is where you used to be able to watch the springs come up through the water. And so it's not all clogged up with or barricaded or layers of muck. There's areas that are spring fed. And I have some nice photographs of that. All these, when the pond dried out in 2016.
I have a couple of questions. Terry Ham, how are you?
Hi, Terry.
Okay, Mr. Chairman? Can I
Yes,
speak?
please.
Yeah. The first question is, you said this is part of the watershed monitoring plan?
Water
No,
Management Act, yeah.
Say that again?
It's the Water Management Act. This
Water
is
management.
the,
So how often is that renewed? How often is that plan renewed?
it was just renewed in June, and I think they have a 10-year expiration.
Oh, okay, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of the data, you said the data from the device that's in the lake is kind of clunky. Where is that data stored? And then in terms of the other wells, I guess I'm wondering why you have how you would relate the monitoring wells near the V4 and V5 to the lake levels. What's the relationship?
Well, we know that
Or if there is.
we know that the wells are pumped.
Yeah.
Right. Are you know, they were in in 2023. So all we can do is look for influences, and as I say, we've got monitoring wells on the. We've got monitoring wells between Cedar Del Lake, 1, 2,
Yep.
3, 4, they're close to the pumping wells. This less so. We don't see that. We don't see any drawdown here. We see a kind of a smooth, natural decline in those wells on Alden Ave, as you have a smooth, natural decline in Cedar Del Lake. And by looking at the precipitation, there's another signal as to influences on pond level. But in this case here, here's October to 2022, April to October 2022.
Yes.
The lake almost dried out and there was no pumping. The following year, there was 1 million gallons a day of pumping and the lake didn't dry out. There was a lot of rain.
So where is the data kept?
The town collects data for Cedar Del Lake because they have to go down and rather than wade into the water, I think he reads it from the shoreline. These wells here are monitored electronically. All of these wells are monitored electronically, and that data goes to the cloud right now, and then it's we collect it, we download it from the cloud. We also will go out monthly and check the water levels manually, so that we know that the instruments are reading correctly. But that data is stored, in our it's just an Excel file. And
so is that
that's available. That's available. That data is available to anybody, and we print all of that data every year with the report that we send to the DEP.
Okay, and you talked about recharging. Can you explain how you think the pond is recharged? I know there's a swamp nearby.
So recharging the groundwater.
Yeah.
Simply by looking at as the chairman pointed out, we don't have a point that looks at both the groundwater levels and the lake levels. I will say, and I'm going back to my recollection, but as I recall, when we established that point, I think there was 8 feet we just pushed the pipe down with our hands. There was so much muck, and we got to a point where we couldn't drive the pipe any further. We were concerned that we might not be able to get a groundwater level beneath the lake, but that's so that we'd be able to actually see groundwater level in the lake versus groundwater level below the lake. But the only information we have on that is that the wells on Alden Ave are lower by a foot. So we suspect that the pond is recharging the groundwater.
I don't know how that can happen when it's dried up, but that's a conversation for another day.
Well, there's still water in the muck. Right.
Okay.
And again, you know, when I'm saying the lake level is dry, it's dry at that point. There may be, because the water, this is like 80 feet from the shore. As you go, you know, farther into the pond, there may still be water in the pond, in the lake, but it's the shore, it gets deeper as you get further into the lake.
I think, you know, we look at the pumping levels every year, and I looked back. I became concerned about the pond in 2016 because the lake was dry for 7 months, completely dry. In 2020, dried out. It's dried out right now. The other years, you see water in there, and it supports the life. There's no fish left because they pretty much died in 2016, but there's other marine life. I mean, there's frogs and turtles, and in the past year, we've seen more of the birds return, you know, that have been there, but not like they were before. So,
well, you know, here's another thing. I mean, the lake, it's always been a shallow, or always.
Yep.
It's always been a shallow pond, always
Yep.
be kind of a loose term. But Mr. Costa sent us some information. There was a request from a gentleman on the east shore of the lake 100 years ago to build an in-pond pool. He wanted to dig out the muck so that he could swim because the lake was too shallow. So, and that 8 feet of muck has been accumulating for 15,000 years. That's just what happens in lakes. They all fill in, and the shallower lakes fill in faster.
So back to the requirement from the state for this permit, do you have to report this information to the state?
Yeah,
And is
yes.
there any information that would come from this that would change what the town is doing in terms of pumping and?
Sure. So I think, you know, we don't know what DEP does with this. We send them the report. We suspect they just put it on file.
Okay. So there's no point at which, for example, I know that there's a level in the Pascagoula River, and if it gets to a certain level, pumping stops. Nothing like that happens here.
No.
Okay.
If there are no other questions, do you want to continue with your presentation?
Sure. So this is more, as Tim was saying, this is my more broad concerns about the future of public water supply and the things that worry me. And you know, having worked with Steve and Tim, you know, I hear from them their concerns, and especially, you know, things like short and long-term interruptions in supply. Now, the Pinelli wells have been offline for the Pinelli 1 and 2 for 2 years, I think. Premature aging of wells and infrastructure. In the case of Violetta well number 2, that's a well that pumped originally, built in 1990, originally pumped over 400 gallons a minute, Steve, I think it was. And within 10 or 15 years of it being built, the pumping rates were reduced to 125, 130, 150, and Steve would clean it twice a year, and it would plug up with iron. The issue was iron accumulation of iron and iron bacteria plugging up the well. And Steve would clean it twice a year at considerable cost. And 3 weeks after he cleaned it, Violetta 2 was back to, you know, he had gotten it up to, they had recovered the pumping rate to 400.
Yeah.
But within 3 weeks, it's now back down to 130. So that worries me about wells at Violetta. That worries me about wells all over the Commonwealth, for that matter, that are near wetlands. So this is sort of a kind of a warning, I guess. You know, as I say, I'm not sure I would have had the conviction to say this even 5 or 10 years ago, but you know, I'm worried that that you will lose, you'll have these interruptions in supply, and that the wells will age out, and they won't, and you'll have to replace them or find another source. So, you know, you've got iron and manganese, color, bacteria. You know, these are not, you know, human contaminants. These are man-made. I'm sorry, these are not. These are natural contaminants, not man-made contaminants. When I think about ideal watershed protection, I point to the Quabbin Reservoir in that Mass Water Resources manages. And this is just a view of the land use. The green is all forest. So the yellow is wetland. There's just a minor amount of residential in orange. But Mass Water Resources has been engaged in comprehensive watershed protection planning since 1991. There's too much at stake for them, obviously, you know, to have interruptions in supply. And they have wildlife and land management programs. 65% of the land is owned by DCR, and 88% of the watershed is forest. That's kind of ideal watershed protection. You know, if you could manage that in Dartmouth, you know, where you own all the land and it's all forest, that would probably be ideal. The other things that Mass Water Resources does is they've got, you know, bird harassment programs. They chase birds off the reservoir, I believe, daily. So, and their overall goal is to avoid filtration. You know, they're going for the ounce of prevention solution, which is what I'm sort of pressing. That's what I'm pushing. So we're back to the Violetta situation here. Here is Old Westport Road. Okay. And these are dredge ponds here down at where V2 and V3 used to be, V2 and V3. And now we have V4 and V5 here. And this is just an expression of how groundwater flows when you're not pumping. So it comes, for example, it comes from the hillsides here on the west. It flows down into the valley and it turns north towards the Pinelli Wells. Down here, it flows off the hillsides down into the valley. It flows out of Cedar Del Lake to the south and so forth. This is all wetland in here. What happens when you start pumping is you get these large cones of depression. So this is a representation of how groundwater flows to the wells when you're pumping. And down in here, you can see that, as I say, this is all swamp in here, V5 and V4. So now you start getting water flowing from beneath the wetland into the wells, and that's probably the source of iron and manganese. And so there's a large contribution of groundwater coming from the wetlands, and that's, you've got the plant there, right? The plant is there to treat iron and manganese. So that's fine. But as I say, what worries me is that the wells will age out prematurely because of plugging, from too much plugging. And it also, you know, we were talking about reduce, reuse, recycle. The goal here is, to the extent that you can either reduce or eliminate iron and manganese in the wells, that creates a more sustainable situation. You're not using as much electrical energy and so forth to treat, less chemicals, less labor. All of that is kind of reduce environmental impact. Please stop me if I'm going too fast, or if you have any questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned about the cone of the depression around the wells as you're pumping. Right now, Cedar Dell Pond is dry, and you're still pumping. So the cone of these cones must be expanding, So my concern is, I sat in on a public information plan meeting for the hazardous waste site across the street at Pine Hill Sand and Gravel. And I'm just wondering if there's any chance of those toxins and chemicals and metals migrating to the wells. Is there any checks of the water to see if there's any chemicals that you don't normally check for? I know the Board of Health and the town administrator have copies of the list of the plans that list of chemicals and contaminants that were pulled out of that site when they did the testing at the Pine Hill Sand and Gravel across the street.
Mr. Costa, Mr. Chairman, can I check in on that question?
Please.
We do volatile organic chemicals, synthetic, on a regular basis at all our 3 treatment plants. So any of the wells that are running, those are checked. We are required by DEP to do sampling of that nature regularly, so it is being done.
Okay, thank you.
One question.
Sure.
There are a large number of observation wells here. These
Yes.
are on the map shown by a designation OW.
Correct, yep.
And these are the wells that are measurements of which are used to develop this map of a cone of depression. Is that correct?
It is correct, yes.
Okay, so you have, from what I'm looking at, a fairly significant amount of data to constrain the nature and the shape of the cones of depression.
Yes, yes, but it's still, you know, as a scientist, you always want more.
Yeah, it's never perfect.
Right,
Yeah,
never
you
perfect.
can never have enough data.
Right.
So I guess my question is, in this particular case, do you have, can you tell us how much pumping is being done in this snapshot of time?
Okay, sure. So this is developed from 2019 when we did a pumping test. I'm going to say we were pumping between V4 and V5. I'm sorry, I don't have that right in front of me. Probably 700,000 gallons a day. And this test went on for 10 or 12 days. So I believe this representation is at the conclusion of that pumping test. So it was a 24/7 pumping 10 days consecutively at, I'm close to 700,000 gallons a day. Now, these 2 wells are approved for 1 million, but they're not pumped that much, which is a good thing. You always need some headroom. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
But I think the point of this was that there's so much wetland around here, and we suspect that the wetland is the source of the iron and manganese, and that's what worries me about those wells. And here again, I just drew this quickly, V4 and V5. So if the wells are drawing a lot of water through the wetland, we would expect the iron and manganese to escalate. So I know this is probably heresy to the wetlands folks, but what I'm suggesting is, and I've talked to Steve and Tim about this, is limited and strategic filling of the wetlands and replication, obviously, in the areas that that seem to be the most influential on the poor water quality. So maybe in here, I don't know, my cursor's not helping me. Maybe in here, that kind of thing. And also look at trying to promote drainage, maybe ditching this to promote drainage to reduce the iron and manganese levels in the wells, extend the life of the wells, less maintenance, less well cleanings, all that sort of thing. That's about cost.
So do I recall that the iron and manganese are, as they are brought into the influence of the well, part of what's going on is a change in oxidation state. And-
Exactly.
And so they begin transport in one form, but as they are exposed to oxidation from the atmosphere and then a change in flow regime and pressure in the immediate area of the well, they tend to precipitate out.
So the wetland science, I think, is pretty well established that you have oxidizing conditions if there's standing water, it's in contact with the atmosphere. So it's probably fully saturated with oxygen. But as the water moves downward through the sediment, through the muck, through the wetland sediment, which is a lot of organic material, by the time you get to the base of the wetland, now you have reducing conditions. So you have a situation where you can dissolve iron and manganese into the water. So to the extent that V4 and V5 pull water from the standing water in the wetlands, that's going to create that condition. Not all of the water, you've got some fresh water up here that's fully oxygenated, and it's not going to be dissolved iron. But the wetland science is pretty well established that that's what occurs here.
But the precipitation at the well
Correct.
is because you've got a second change in oxidation state.
Correct. It goes back, and now it's precipitating.
Okay.
Because the water is now being, you're pumping water out of it. It's fully oxygenated. When the
Right.
well shuts off, the water in the well is fully oxygenated, and that promotes precipitation of iron. And there's also iron bacteria that's also a natural bacteria that is resident in the well. And so that the iron bacteria creates this slime and plugging.
And that's the Crenithix family of bacteria typically.
So that's one of them. Gallionella is another, and yes, there's a family of iron bacteria that like to, and the slime they create is a protective slime, so they can live inside the slime. Yeah.
So there's a combination of the precipitation and the iron bacteria filling the pores immediately around the well, as well as causing problems with the well stream.
Exactly. And so the wells, as I say, here's V2 down here. Steve, is that right? V2? And I think that's what happened with this well. Steve was cleaning it twice a year, and it was full of iron bacteria, full of iron, and the pumping rate was never recovered. So that's why we had to abandon that.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Ham, you have a question?
I do. I have a couple. So there's a composting site on Fisher Road, which is not far from here. Is this iron and manganese completely natural, or is it a contaminant that's coming from? I don't know anything about composting except that
Sure.
I know that the odor comes here periodically. So if it's reaching us here, I'm thinking there's some connection.
Wasn't aware of that activity on Fisher Road. I suspect, depending on where it is, it may have some influence, but I think it much more the proximate, whatever is closest to the well probably has more of an influence.
And then the other question is improving drainage. Is it even possible to deal with wetlands? I thought it was complete hands off. Would you have to work with the conservation department or?
Of course. I know it, and as I say, I think, this is somewhat heresy to even say that you're going to, dredge wetlands and fill wetlands. It would be a 1-for-1 situation where you would, if you take out 3 acres of wetland, you've got to replicate it somewhere.
And how is that going to prevent iron and manganese contamination?
So the idea would be as I say, the wetland science is pretty well established, that when you have flooded wetlands especially,
So it's the standing
there's so
water.
much
Okay.
organic material in the
Mhm.
wetland that it creates these chemical conditions where iron is dissolved. Iron is dissolved and then it migrates towards the well.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
No.
Yeah, I do, Jim, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Okay, so Doug had mentioned that the pond is reliant on a lot of rainfall. I think one of the reasons why on his graphs that it shows the pond level increasing is the town has a 30-inch drain pipe and connects with the street catch basins for over a mile uphill and down towards Alden Ave. And that runoff goes directly into the pond. I was wondering if the town would be having any plans to filter out this water, similar to what they've done in Wareham, Westport. In 2005, Westport had built a man-made wetland to filter out toxins, trash, and sediment, and that empty into the Westport River. What's happened over here at Cedar Dell is that 30-inch pipe coming in from the catch basins that run up about a mile. They've been dumping sediment, debris, and road toxins into the pond, and it actually created a river delta at that angle there, where it comes into the pond of sediment, and now Phragmites have started to grow in there, and it's increasing. Does the town have any plans to filter out that water coming into the pond? I've got some great pictures of contamination I could show you at any time. I'm just not prepared to do it today.
Tim, could you organize a discussion with Mr. Costa and bring that in perhaps under the our stormwater program?
Absolutely, and we'd be very interested in looking at some treatment possibilities for that. Whether it's proprietary structure or some kind of bioretention. And if we have the room to construct something like that, we could look at some possible grant funding to fund something like that. I know catch basins, as long as they have hoods, they do provide some treatment, but not complete treatment. So I think we can definitely look into adding some treatment for that. I know Westport also has a very strict stormwater requirement, even for residential development around water bodies like lakes, where they require residential development to construct their own bioretention treatment for runoff from individual residential properties. And I know there's nothing like that in Dartmouth currently, but.
All right, so Mr. Costa, why don't you contact Public Works and begin a conversation about what can be done out there?
Okay, it sounds great. Sounds positive. Just one other question. When we're looking at the monitoring wells and the test wells, I was wondering if you have a comparison between the present Violetta well site and the test wells from 1976, when Dartmouth Power installed the first wells at that site for ground table elevation from 76, and comparing it to what we have now. The Cedar Dell Pond has never dried out its history until 2016, and I've got a record of a few droughts since they've been keeping records, and the pond has not dried, and they used to stock it with fish and large turtles in there and so forth. But right now it's close to bone dry, and there's a lot of endangered species in that area too. I was wondering if you would have the comparison from 76 to now.
So I can answer partly. So Violetta Well 1 was over here. When that was built in 76, they did do a pumping test, and I know they had a observation point in Cedar Del Lake. I will say that the quality of pumping test records from the mid-70s is not what we do today. So it was really ambiguous. But there was nothing that indicated, by the way, this is a half a mile, okay, between V1 and the shore. So it's implausible that it was an impact, but there was some testing done. It's just that the quality of the work was not, it wasn't required. When V2 and V3 went in, I know there was a report done in 89 or 90 that I've seen. I haven't looked at that in a while, but I think there was some groundwater mapping. I don't know whether it addressed the as far as Cedar Del.
Okay.
Again, the standards have continuously improved in terms of monitoring or understanding how these systems work. So back in that area, there was not as stringent.
Okay, so the other part of the question would be, is the town, when the lake gets this low, is the town gonna start restricting pumping similar to they have the protections of the Pascomanskett with those wells? Will they stop or cut back or something?
Tim, that's not required by the permit, is that correct?
Correct. So the state requires us to monitor the Pascomanskett River and shut down any wells at a certain elevation. They don't require that for Cedar Del.
And for the testing of the wells near the Pascomanskett, was there any indication that those wells had hydraulic connection with the river? Do you know?
I don't know offhand, but we could look at that.
I have a slide in a second. I can show you.
All right. Okay, let's move on.
Sure. So this will go fast. This is all of this light green area. This pistachio green is wetland, and a lot of this area. This is Pinelli well number 1, Pinelli well number 2. This is the well that has color. I think Pinelli has bacteria, has had some bacteria, flooded wetland. And that's what the water looks like draining out of the wetland near Pinelli 2. So, I mean, one possible solution would be not only improving drainage, but removing the trees that produce the color. Again, I'm just laying these out there as possible solutions for you guys to consider. Here's the E and D wells. Tim, you can tell me which. I think these are both E1 and E2.
Yeah,
is that right? And the D well is here. Yep. These are all dredge wells. And the Pascomanskett, Steve will tell you, in the wintertime, the Pascomanskett will back up and flood these ponds. And I think, there's an iron and manganese problem, there's a bacteria problem. There's another opportunity perhaps to manage the wetlands, to improve drainage and fill these water bodies to prevent these water quality problems. Again, this is asset management, the way I view it. This is watershed management, is asset management. And in summary, so Dartmouth has worked hard for over 60 years to develop, maintain, and deliver high quality drinking water from its local supplies. I'm just recommending that we kind of rethink this whole idea of wellhead and watershed protection so that the water quality remains high into the future. The town's going to be, the town's going to be around forever. The overall philosophy is, why would you treat if you could remove the source? This is what we do in contaminant hydrogeology. If there's a gas station leak, you take the tank out and you clean up the gasoline. Managing the environment is asset management. WRA is doing. So removing trees, improving drainage, filling old gravel pit ponds, removing and replicating wetlands could reduce or eliminate the need to treat water, extend the life of the wells and infrastructure, and thereby reduce short and long-term costs.
All right, any questions? Earlier you had a part of a painting of a philosopher. And you also suggested that some of these ideas may be heretic. And I will observe that the difference, only history gives you an ability to understand the difference between a philosopher and a heretic. So,
well, I gave a presentation similar to this in Foxborough a couple of years ago, and I said to one of the staff members, we were walking, I said, I don't know whether this is going to work. And he says, Doug, 150 years ago, there were no light bulbs. Now we got light bulbs. So we move, we learn, time moves on, we learn and we progress, hopefully.
I also need to observe, since there is another geologist here, that geologists have a warped sense of time. And that's because when they're being trained as geologists, they're taught to think in millions of billions of years. And depending on what kind of classes you take, seconds and less than seconds. And it really does give you a warped sense of time, and one that not a lot of other people share. So,
well, I also turned 71 a couple of weeks ago. So, this is the other thing that happens when you get old.
Yeah, well, I got you. So anyway, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. I appreciate Ms. Ham and Mr. Costa being here and asking questions. Mr. Costa, I think out of this discussion has grown a potential stormwater control measure that would potentially benefit the lake. And I don't know that we're ever going to understand the system completely, but certainly monitoring helps. So, and so do hard questions. And the data, if I remember the discussion, the data are in reports that are held by the department. So if you need to look at old data, it's there, and just, make an appointment, and you can also get copies. I don't think there's any problem making copies if you need them.
Good, thank you. This is encouraging. Thank you.
Yep. And one last observation. I can personally attest to the improvement of quality of pumping and aquifer tests. I did my first one in 1977, so I get it. I really do. Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you for your stamina and listening to this.
All right, so that was new business presentation A. I think it would be appropriate is Mr. Michaud still with us? If not, I still would like to bring up the discussion of a petition for Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection and bring that up now, because I think that may be of broad interest to some of the people that are here.
Thank you, Doug, very much.
All right, so if you don't mind, I'd like to take item, new business F out of order and deal with that now. This is a petition that Public Works Department has prepared and has discussed in front of the select board. In reading through it, I think the main points are a well and complete discussion of problems with composting. The petition suggests that the state needs to revise its siting regulations. And in particular, the site plan review and issues having to do with setbacks and odor. It suggests that there needs to be compliance with discharge regulations, and that the state needs to move away from self-certification. I think those three items in this petition are essential for the responsible use of composting, both to reduce our waste stream to limited disposal sites, but also to assure that responsible composting can result in a product that has some benefit. Mr. Michaud, would you like to help us understand where we're going with this and what you would like this board to do?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Christopher Michaud, Director of Public Health for the town of Dartmouth. Thank you, Mr. Almy, for presenting that so well. You really summarized the petition letter and the accompanying pages of draft regulations. Just to back up where this is all coming from, many, many years, it was mentioned earlier in this meeting by one of the residents, Ms. Ham, about the persistent odors. That became our first introduction into composting, was nuisance odors invading neighborhoods, and in some cases, very far away. A few years later, we began to see some of the impacts as the composting started to grow in size because of the diverted waste materials to these sites. And consequently, we started to see down gradient impacts to the vegetation. As sites proliferated and the volume increased at other sites, we actually had the opportunity to see an impact on a water body. We were able to take testing and to demonstrate impacts through data. And we presented that and mentioned that on several occasions to Mass DEP. Most recently, we discovered that there is an administrative set of regulations that Mass DEP has, 310 CMR 2.0. Buried within that is a section that allows any person to petition Mass DEP to amend, revise, rescind regulations that they have. The provisions for that doesn't require a certain number. So I presented this to the select board a little over around a month ago. And at that meeting, the select board expressed an interest to exercise this option. In a subsequent discussion, the select board requested other land use departments of the town of Dartmouth to consider the same. So the Board of Health last week voted to sign on to the petition. Earlier this week, the select board signed the petition. We know that it is going to go before the planning board at their next meeting. It'll go before the Conservation Commission at the next meeting, and possibly also Waterways. I haven't had direct conversations with their chair, but I've had conversations with one of the members. So we only need to have one person sign or a board sign, but I really believe that given the widespread impacts of composting on Dartmouth, both in air and land and water, that these other boards consider signing on. So I appreciate this opportunity today for the Board of Public Works to consider the same. We're not asking to eradicate or to ban composting. We're merely asking for parity with other states that are composting very well and balancing the need for alternative solid waste management and protection of the environment. Thank you.
All right, do I have any questions from board members?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
I have no questions. Any questions or comments from the public?
Yes, I do. Just wondered, I've seen 18-wheelers go down the road at 2 a.m. and they go to there. I'm just wondering, does anybody check to see what's being dumped besides leaves and biodegradable things, natural things? Because we had as Terry mentioned, we have the smell coming up here a few times. It was overwhelming, and that wasn't from leaf. It was from something else, huh? So does anybody get to go in there and test what's being in there? Thank you.
Chris?
Mr. Chair, thank you. So we do not have by right access. Mass DEP has administrative access, irrespective of whether a site is registered by them or not, because Mass DEP is charged with protecting the Commonwealth's interests. So therefore, if they were denied access to a site that was composting under Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, for example, they would have the ability to seek an administrative warrant. I appreciate that concern, Mr. Costa, because that has been something that has frustrated us enormously. We have received the same concerns from residents. And as I mentioned to the select board, not at this meeting, but the meeting before, that the letter that the Board of Public Works is considering and other boards have considered and will consider, this is not something that was written strictly from the perspective of Chris. This is something that Chris Michaud, the Director of Public Health, has compiled from hundreds of conversations and summarized that into this letter. We have had the ability to go into some of these sites. Some of them we've had freer abilities. Other ones we've been frustrated. So I don't like the nature of these operations under the current permitting scheme. If I want to go to Crapo Hill landfill, for example, I have administrative access. As a site assigning authority, we have administrative access. We do not have it at these sites. And our proposal will provide much more rigorous safeguards. Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to for the board to support and sign the petition that has been prepared by Public Health.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner LaBelle makes the motion to approve and sign the letter prepared by Public Health. The chair seconds. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, approved. So Chris, can you make sure we have the right copy to sign, and either Mr. LaBelle or myself will execute a signature? Thank you.
Rob, I do have a signature page.
All right.
All set to go. So when you come in, you can sign that, and Ron, if you need it, us to come to you, we can come to you for a signature.
All right. I think we could probably, one of us, if I come in, and Tim, you can remind me, I've got to sign warrants and payrolls anyway.
Correct. I will.
All right.
Yeah, I'm still not driving yet.
All right.
No golf?
No, nothing.
Soon. Is that part of the physical therapy, is swinging your club?
One-handed putting, correct.
One-handed putting.
You'd be amazed at how limited.
Yeah.
All right.
So we can get it over to you, Ron.
All right. So next item is a discussion of townwide water quality monitoring. I put this item on the agenda simply to put an outline of a potential plan, townwide plan for monitoring out into the public for discussion. I don't know that I I don't know what kind of a response to have on this. I will observe that there are at least 3 water quality monitoring programs going on in the town. One is from the Buzzards Bay Coalition and its partners, looking at water quality in selected water bodies. A second is the sampling that is done and associated with the town's stormwater program. And the third is water quality monitoring that's done in public access beaches. These programs have their own data sets. Finding them, I don't think is particularly straightforward for the public. One is held by the state, one is held by the Buzzards Bay Coalition, and one is held by the Public Works Department. What my vision is to look at water quality from a watershed perspective, that is looking up from the estuary or other receiving water bodies, and having a deliberate discussion about what monitoring is appropriate given existing land uses, potential future land uses, and what we want to know about changes in the watershed. So that's, again, I've put this out not for approval, but to foster discussion so that these concepts are in the public domain. People can pick them up and think about them. And then I presume we can have a future meeting. I also have a sense that it would be appropriate for other town commissions and boards to have discussion about water quality monitoring. And at some point in the future, have a discussion among various interests, including waterways, public health, and the Concom as kind of a minimum to agree where we are and where we should go in the future in this. This isn't it isn't for me to tell other boards what to do, but I think I'm suggesting that some kind of a conversation is a good idea. And that's my introduction. I'm not sure what to expect, but Mr. LaBelle, do you have any comments?
No, I thought it was pretty comprehensive. I got to review it this week. The only one thing I would add would be cross connections to this.
All right.
I know from past experience, for instance, the Clark Cove watershed, and in that general area, there are cross connections that exist, and they do get into the cove, and they get into the cove, you know, from CSOs in New Bedford and from cross connections in the town. I've had this discussion many, many years, and I think this is a unique and good approach to resolving issues of that nature.
All right. Any comments from the public? Hearing none. Tim, that item was attached to the agenda, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so was that item part of the posting of the agenda? Do you know?
It's part of the document listing.
Yeah, it's on the document list. All right, so any of you that do not have a copy of that outline and want a copy, can you contact Tim and he can make it available? All right, and hearing no other comments, let's move on to item C, which is revised hours of brush and leaf. Tim?
Hey, Water Pollution Control, our superintendent has requested that we revise our brush and leaf drop-off hours through the winter, only for Saturdays. Currently, we're open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from 7:15 to 3:15, and every Saturday from 7:15 to 2:45. He's asking that we reduce the number of Saturdays that were open throughout January and February due to the number of residents that actually use the facility, down to one Saturday per month for each January and February.
So what type of activity do we typically have in those 2 months?
Dennis, are you available?
Yeah, so we usually get, during those 2 months, maybe a vehicle or two in an 8-hour period. So to have a guy there just waiting doesn't make sense.
Right? How would we let the public know about these changes?
So any posting would go one to the town clerk, and it would go on our website. And we could probably also put it out on the social media platform with Magnolia over at Town Hall.
And on Dartmouth TV, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Ron, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I think that trying to be more efficient and effective with staff, giving, if only one or two people are coming in the course of a week or a day is certainly an appropriate response.
Yeah, we would remain open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for the normal operation hours, so. And then
So
that
the
one
only-
Saturday a month.
The only change is a reduction in Saturday access.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Do you need action from us, or is that sufficient discussion?
Yeah, if you support that, we would move forward. Yep.
Can I have a motion to support?
Motion to support the revised hours of brush and leaf area through the winter.
Mr. LaBelle has made a motion to support reduced hours. The chair seconds. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right, moving on to the next item. Approval of Bryant Street moratorium relief request. Tim?
So I believe Nick Pike is on here, Nicholas Pike. He has requested to possibly cut into Bryant Street, which is currently under moratorium. It's under a 7 moratorium. We're into year 3. It was milled and paved in 2021. Nick is proposing to build a single family dwelling on a vacant lot that had a sewer service, but did not have a water service to the property. And he would like to connect to the water. We've also discussed that since it's an AC water main, it's hard for us to locate exactly where the water main is. On plans, it shows that it might be just into the shoulder or a couple feet into the paved roadway. And Nick is interested in possibly digging a test pit when he wants to confirm the elevation of the sewer service, to also dig a test pit to see if the water is actually in the shoulder or in the paved roadway.
So Tim, what is your recommendation here?
I've spoken to the highway department and they're okay with it, being only a couple feet. If it was on the long side of the road, they would not be supportive of cutting across to the other side of the road while in the moratorium. I just serve for domestic water use. So I would definitely want to look at test pit to see the exact if the location is in the shoulder or under the road.
Any questions or comments, Ron?
So he is requesting to cut the existing pavement.
Yeah, he's requesting permission from the board to cut existing pavement prior to moving forward with
To check for utilities.
to check for the utilities. So he does have a building permit, and that would hold up his building permit.
Okay, how far along in the moratorium are we?
3 out of 7.
3 out of 7. All right, And we have a policy, the department has a policy in place that requires whoever repairs that patch is responsible for it for a number of years.
Correct. Yep. So a bond is required by the contractor, and it's required for 2 years.
2 years. And the moratorium is 3 out of 7, so that leaves 4 years. Is there a way to, should we be requesting that he be responsible for that patch?
We can make that as part of the approval if the board does approve the road cut.
I would support that.
All right, would you care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Bryant Street moratorium relief as long as the resident is held responsible for that patch for the remainder, which I believe is 4 years in the moratorium.
Is the person requesting the variance going to live there for that time period?
So would that be, would that responsibility go with the property, Tim?
It typically goes with the contractor currently.
All right. So, and it's based on a bond? There's a
Correct.
bond?
Yes.
Okay. So
Am I
then,
overcomplicating that?
No, because we can, so we would discuss this, one, with the contractor. If the contractor does not want to leave, continue that bond for 4 years, that would be required of the homeowner for the remainder of the years.
Okay.
Or so
I think it's a win-win. I mean, we still need, if we're going to put a moratorium in place, we should be enforcing it.
correct.
People want us to excuse them from it, then there needs to be, appropriate
Protection.
response.
Absolutely. I agree.
all right, so I have a motion from Mr. LaBelle to approve the moratorium relief request under the condition of an extended bond that matches the life expectancy of the road, which is 7 years. And the board chair will second that. Is there any further discussion? I saw Mr. Pike might want to say something.
Yes, thank you very much for your time. I'm essentially asking for permission for something that I'm not entirely sure if I'll even need. I only wanted to be on this board meeting just to kind of get ahead of the game here. My excavator is going to be starting next week with his digging, and I just didn't want to, if we do hit that test pit, and if we are, say, a foot into the shoulder there, that would be held up until the next meeting. I will avoid any road cutting at all costs here. And going off the plans that I have here, it actually shows that this line actually comes about 1.5 feet into the shoulder. So I think if I can at least locate the top of this pipe, then we'll be fine without having to do any road cutting whatsoever.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's approved. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just want to also state, I know you stated that the life expectancy of the road would be 7 years. That's actually just the moratorium to protect the road from any disturbance. The life expectancy should be a lot longer than that.
Yes, I apologize.
No
You're
worries.
right. All right, the next item E is approval of Weston Sampson contract for treatment facility update and construction supervision. Tim?
So we have designed, advertised, and awarded the upgrades at the 579 Westport Road Treatment Facility. Those were funded by mostly Bristol County ARPA and a small amount from the federal ARPA from the revenue replacement to about $2.6 million. And we would moving forward to construction, Weston and Sampson has submitted an agreement for construction supervision and management. Due to funding, we asked them to phase this agreement, so that this would be the first phase of the construction management, not to exceed $100,000 that we do have current funding for. And then any, additional funding would go to town meeting in the spring, in our capital.
So is the first phase, Tim, ARPA funds, or is that from the town?
We still have some funding through an article.
Through our ARPA?
Nope, through
Okay, so this
former
is,
capital improvement
all right.
article.
Okay,
That
so
was-
these are town funds?
Yeah.
Right, all right. Mr. LaBelle, any questions?
Could you explain to me the phasing of this?
So the full agreement is for a larger sum throughout the entirety of the construction project. So this scope of services, if you read through the contract, allows for, a number of meetings, monthly applications up to 6 for payment requests, meet with the owner and construction contractor up to 6 times, part-time resident project representative as well.
So this phasing, this first phase, with an expenditure of $100,000 brings us to what level of completion in the project? I guess is what I'm thinking.
See if, I was just seeing if Weston and Sampson was still on, but it looks like they logged off. So we had
Excuse me
asked,
once-
yep.
I gotta plug in my computer or I'm gonna lose everybody.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No worry.
Oh, God. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You all set?
Almost set. Thank you.
So that,
Right.
the construction of this would be through 2025 and part through 2026. So we would be looking for future capital and for Springtown meeting going towards FY 26.
Yeah,
So,
okay. All right, I'm not trying to make a big deal. I was just trying to understand when you say you're gonna piece this together. But
Right.
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, the agreement for engineering services with Weston and Sampson at the value of $100,000.
Mr. LaBelle moves approval of the contract for construction supervision. Chair seconds. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. I believe that brings us to the end of the items on our agenda. So the next item is item G, committee updates. So we have had a long conversation with the tree committee. Tim, is there anything to add to that?
No, this was on the agenda before the tree committee was on the agenda, so we basically updated through the tree committee's presentation.
Okay, Pathways Committee?
Pathways Committee. The Pathways Committee reached out to me and asked if a DPW member or board member would be willing to join their committee as a town representative to help facilitate the committee's goals as well as the town's plans to improve facilities for bicyclists and pedestrians throughout the town. So I'm passing that along to the board. And see if
So, this William Trimble, I'm on the Dartmouth Pathways Committee, and I'm here at the
Thank you for
meeting.
joining us and thank you for your patience.
No problem. I just have a couple items. I won't take your time very much. I just wanted to tell you that the Dartmouth Heritage Trail kiosks, there were 8 installed originally of 10 proposed, and those have been completed by a grant from the CPC and work of the Dartmouth Dartmouth Pathways Committee. And they had a ride in October, and over 100 people completed the 35-mile ride and visited those kiosks. I want to thank the Highway Department for their fog lines that were painted on recently on Russell's Mills Road, on Allen Street, and Old Westport Road, where they were newly paved. They're much appreciated. They, I believe, have calmed traffic and provided more confidence for cyclists and pedestrians along those roads.
Yes, and we did reduce the lane width a small amount to increase the shoulder width.
Yeah, and I ride Russell's Mills Road frequently, and it's terrific. Thank you. A couple of questions. The Dartmouth Heritage Trail, part of the grant that we used CPC money from was to get signs for to designate the Dartmouth Heritage Trail. Those signs have been received, and what is outstanding is installation. There's still some money from CPC in the Dartmouth Pathways Committee budget or the CPC request to get those installed. I don't know what the process is for getting that done. So if at another time, Tim, you could contact us and let us know what we need to do about that. Appreciate it. I see around the area that there are vulnerable road user signs that have been installed in many surrounding towns. Has Dartmouth received any of those?
I don't believe that we have to date.
Okay. Is there any plans for that?
No, but we can definitely look into it, I think.
Okay. All right. Terrific. And the other thing
I've also noticed those signs, so yeah.
Yeah. The final thing I have is just that I've been looking for when we applied as a Complete Streets community, we had a priority streets plan that was the second phase of that. And it was on the Mass DOT website, and I tried to return to it, and they've changed the website, and the stuff is gone, and I don't know where to find it.
So it might still be under the Mass DOT website, but they moved everything from Complete Streets into I don't know if it's a one stop. I'd have to check, but it's on to a different page.
Okay.
So I can find that for you, and I can send you that link.
All right. Terrific.
Sure.
Thank you. But I think the Pathways Committee might be interested in maybe perhaps revisiting that prioritization, and
Sure.
perhaps we could work with you on that.
Absolutely.
Thanks for taking a few minutes to listen to us.
You're welcome.
All right, so Tim, if you could go back to the request to have somebody sit on the Pathways Committee, do you know who is on that committee? Who else? What other town organizations?
Mr. Trimble?
Right now, we only have 2 members. Well, actually, we have 3, but one is soon to be leaving. We have Mr. Langhauser is on the committee, and Sandra Maderas and myself.
All right, and they are from other boards or
They're
other
not.
committees?
No.
All right, and so who do you anticipate asking to serve on the board? What other entities in the town are you asking for?
We thought that particularly the Department of Public Works would be a helpful thing. Perhaps somebody from highways or like that.
All right. I also suggest you see if you can get somebody from planning.
Yes, that's a good
on-
idea.
Take a long view. Tim, could you consult with Mr. Trimble and come back to us with a recommendation as to whether it would be a board member or a staff person? I'll leave that recommendation for you to make.
Okay.
All right. Mr. LaBelle, do you have any questions or comments?
No, none at all. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for taking your time.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for your patience and hanging in there. It's been a long meeting. All right.
Hi, this is Sandra Maderas. If I may speak just for a moment, please.
I'm sorry. Yes, please do.
Hi, I don't have any video at the moment. I wish to speak to the vulnerable road user law signs. According to Andrea Duart of Serped, 60 signs were ordered for the town of Dartmouth, and we do have a listing of where the placement was suggested. So we're just awaiting arrival in the town of Dartmouth, I guess. And I haven't got an answer from them as to, why there was a shipping delay. They did have a second round of ordering. So I don't know who we should speak to next to find out why we haven't received them or when to expect them.
All right.
Maybe reach out
Tim,
back to Andrea. We can send her an email.
Yeah, Tim, just let us know when you're starting to deploy those signs. All right. Moving on to the director's update. Tim?
All right, so as far as the AG office update, I've discussed that earlier. Personnel, I'd like to announce Steve Sullivan is retiring at the end of December. And we have some big shoes to fill, replacing Steve. We do have the position advertised, and haven't received too many applicants. So we've asked Steve and discussed with personnel director and town administrator if we could keep Steve on the contract for a number of hours for the following year as a transitional contract employee to help transition to a new superintendent as well as an acting water and sewer superintendent.
All right, and Steve, I presume you're going to invite us all to your retirement party? No comment. That's good. All right. I personally will be sorry to see Steve go, and party or no party, I wish him well.
Absolutely.
Tim, next item.
Other personnel staffing in the DPW, although we have filled some vacancies, some HMEO positions, and we just filled one SMEO position, which is SMEO is a CDL requirement and a hoisting engineer license. So now we currently have 6 HMEO CDL driver positions vacant, 1 SMEO CDL and hoisting position vacant, and we also have a craftsman, a water pollution control operator vacancy, and we just lost one of our master mechanics at the highway went to another municipality for a higher paying position, and so we have that vacancy as well.
All right,
So altogether, how many vacancies?
Uh, We've about 12 total.
12?
Yeah.
And what type of action is the town taking, you know, HR to help you fill positions? Are we advertising? I mean, are we looking?
Yep. So these positions are advertised. We're looking. We're reviewing any of the applicants that come in from Indeed. HR doesn't typically help with that, so DPW has been taking on that. Anyone who applies directly with personnel, then they will forward that information to us. So we've, you know, like I said, we've interviewed a number of HMEO and SMEO positions. This, you know, we still have, even though we've moved forward with memorandum of agreement. So any HMEO positions that we can bring them in at a higher step in the grade, which allows us to offer a higher pay scale to start, which I think is what has gotten us this far. You know,
Good,
this is,
okay, that's what I'm getting at, okay.
and then recently, just approved on this past Monday night, we offered a memorandum of agreement for SMEOs as well with a CDL with a hoisting license, because we noticed that if we start an SMEO at step 1, they're going to be starting at a lower step than an HMEO. So the union agreed to the terms, the MOA, and the select board approved that on Monday night. So we just hired one SMEO, and we'll be bringing them in at a higher step, step 4, I believe. And moving forward, we can offer that into that position as well.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
You're
Could I go back to one thing, Mr. Chairman?
absolutely.
When you mentioned about Steve's retirement and his willingness to sign a contract to stay on, where is that, and whose decision is that to make?
Well, I requested that I discussed it with Steve first, and then we proposed it to the town administrator and the HR director, and they're working on basically a description of that position for the contract, so we can move
Okay.
forward. Yeah.
Okay, when do we expect that to, I mean, December's coming pretty quick.
Yes, it is. Yep. We should have that pretty soon. So they asked us to outline a number of duties that job, you know, would
Okay.
endure. So we've worked with our assistant director has been working on that, and we get that over to HR. So
Okay,
we
right,
expect
so
to
you-
have
you-
this well before he retires.
yeah, so you'll give us an update on where that stands.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Tim, ARPA?
ARPA, to date, we have been awarded just over 5.1 million from Bristol County ARPA, and we have projects underway and projects scheduled to begin after the first of the year as well. We still have 2 projects under review, 2 smaller projects with a total like $32,000, and hopefully those are approved soon. I haven't received any questions on them from the county, so they just say they're under review. Also, the finance director, co-acting town administrator, reached out to me on Friday, and I guess due to some procurement issues on the former town administrator, they still have I think 1.3 million in revenue replacement ARPA funding. So he actually went to the select board on Monday night and got approved to apply 700,000 of that to any DPW projects. So we're working to see what we can expedite to use that money.
Good deal.
Yes.
Okay, so,
Wish I had a few more months to work on it though,
well,
but we don't.
what comes to mind is the contract we just approved for Weston Sampson for a project there.
Yes, and that I also I submitted that to the town administrator for possible use as well.
Yeah, so in the end, if everything works out, big if, the Public Works Department will exercise something just south or north of $6 million if all of this works.
Yep.
Through ARPA. So that's money that local ratepayers and taxpayers wouldn't have to shell out of their own pockets.
Exactly.
That's a lot of work getting done.
It is.
Yep.
All right, good.
Good job, Tim, to you and your staff.
All right,
Thanks. We've been
excellent.
working hard with getting these projects up and running.
All right, well,
It's fun.
let's finish this meeting so you can get back to the stuff that matters. Enterprise fund update?
So this was on the agenda, but it was pretty much discussed in the Abraham's report.
Okay.
We had received the enterprise fund numbers at the end of last week, and I submitted that to Abraham's, and they got it in their presentation. So that was all taken care of. Just that the numbers have the enterprise fund retained earnings and revenues have increased since the last couple of years due to the rate increases.
All right. All right, next item is Mass DOT tip project update.
So we have a few projects in the queue. We have our phase 1 crossroad improvements from Vincent Street to the Autumn Glen Assisted Living, which includes road reconstruction, shade use path, sidewalks, curbing, and updating on some utilities, overhead utility poles, and the Mass DOT has scheduled a virtual design public hearing for December 5th at 6:30 p.m. The link is on our website. It's been advertised in local papers, and it's on the Mass DOT website as well.
All right. Tim, anything else that you want to share with us?
Diamond Street, Prospect Street project. We're working on an amendment to this project. Hopefully create a more palatable project to Mass DOT. I think the Prospect Street right away is given a lot of problems to what Mass DOT requires for their development standards. So I'm looking at possibly removing the Prospect Street portion and just working on the Dartmouth Street portion, which seems to be more palatable for Mass DOT. So once we get those amendments, we'll bring it before the board to review.
All right.
And then lastly, Hawthorne Street improvements. This project has advanced from the project intake level at Mass DOT, and Mass DOT has scheduled their own project review committee meeting for December 12th for this project. And if all goes well, we'll be moving towards the pre-25% advancement of those design plans for Hawthorne Street. And that's from Slocum Road to the New Bedford line, and possibly we can definitely reach out to the city and see if they'd be willing to go in with us and extend that right to the intersection, so the signaled intersection, so we can have some connectivity with our shared use path and the road reconstruction.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we're also we also had requested a signal warrant analysis by SERPED through the JTPG, and they completed their traffic analysis, and we're working with them to get some more information so they can complete their report on the intersection of Slocum Road and Hawthorne Street.
All right.
And that is all I have.
All right. I would like to report that I sat in on a meeting with the mayor of New Bedford and Selectman Tattlebaum. And after some discussion of shared concerns, the town offered support in coordinating any efforts to extend the life of the Crapo Hill landfill, coordination on monitoring and better stormwater control in the catchment of the Cove area, which has seen some beach closures. And finally, we understand that New Bedford will provide us with a draft contract for ongoing purchase of water from them in the near future. So with that, do I have any other items, Tim?
It wasn't 3.5 hours long, was it? Your
No,
meeting? Okay.
no. And by the way, I found out a piece of trivia. Town Hall in New Bedford has the oldest elevator in the United States. And any of you who have not availed themselves to that elevator ought to do it. It is
I have.
a wonderful piece of
It is.
engineering.
It is.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's as much art as it is engineering. It really is something. Anyway,
It is unique.
it really is. I
Yeah.
I had to ask. I really did. I had no idea. Okay, anything else for the board to consider? With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion from Mr. LaBelle to adjourn. The chair seconds. Mr. LaBelle, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you all for being with us for a rather lengthy meeting. And Tim, I guess our next meeting is the 19th of December. Is that right?
Yes, currently, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all, and
Thank you, everybody.
have a good end to your week.
Thank
And
you, and everybody have a great Thanksgiving.
Have a great
Yep,
Thanksgiving.
have a great Thanksgiving.